Constantine's body was a mess as we brought it into the barracks. The company huddled around as he was placed on a table, and his body stripped. The smell of burnt flesh and charred leather was strong among the stink of days in the woods. His leather bracers had bite marks on them, and when removed, bloody, partially scabbed-over puncture marks were underneath. Lurkin checked the forearm. Bone is broken. Get the healer in the city if someone has not been sent already. Felix immediately took off at a run, his footfalls echoing on the stone. Constantine groaned, and Lurkin whispered to him, "You got back, you tough bastard. We will heal you in a day, and you can return to being your old cantankerous self." Constantine's dry throat tried to speak. Lurkin leaned down and put his ear to the man to hear. Lurkin stood after listening and informed us what he said. He found the summoner. It set a pair of hellhounds on him. A lot of whispers rang through the men as no one seemed to know what a hellhound was. Castile walked purposedly in at this moment with Adrian behind her. She answered the question I had. A hellhound is an infernal dog, not from this plane of existence. It is a summoned creature that is a relentless tracker. Constantine. Castile stood over Constantine, taking in his abused body and getting his attention. Are the hounds who pursued you dead? Constantine painfully nodded his head in the affirmative. Castile nodded. And the summoner? Is he dead too? Constantine shook his head negatively, not being able to speak loudly. Castile grimaced. She put his hand on his shoulder. Everyone get some rest. I will wait with Constantine for the healer and potions. Adrian shuffled everyone away. As I walked away, I felt guilty for not going with Constantine on his scouting mission. Maybe he would not be in such terrible shape if I had accompanied him. I returned to the tower with Flavius and Maveth. Flavius talked as we went. Summoners and hellhounds, bad omens. I guess we will be marching soon and hunting the summoner. Best to get some rest. When we got to our tower floor, the empty bed we had brought up here for Constantine was apparently going to be filled soon. I lay down in my bed, and my mind flashed to Constantine. I recalled his return. He was in terrible shape, but he also did not have his pack or his weapons. His artificed sword was missing, and I imagined it was out there somewhere, stuck inside some fiery beast. I did not use the amulet as I settled down tonight, but did take an oblivion pill to stave off nightmares I knew would haunt me. If I didn't, I would imagine myself looking just like Constantine. I was awakened in the morning by a familiar hoarse voice. "Eric, you can sleep through anything. Get up. It is time for breakfast and some training." Constantine's voice was raspy, but it was definitely him. "Love you too, Constantine. Glad you are not Didor. Perhaps you are a revenant back from the dead to hound me," I said, smirking at my joke. Mavith laughed in his deep voice. "That is a good twisting of the words, Eric. Hound because a hellhound almost killed him." I opened my eyes to see Constantine standing over me, grinning. His face was gaunt, and his eyes sunken. "You look like an ogre just shit you out." His grin faded. "I am still fit enough to teach you a thing or two in the practice yard," he rasped out with his dry voice. "With what?" "I didn't see your magic blade on you yesterday," I said, and immediately regretted it. Constantine's face fell in some remembered pain, and maybe it was too soon to be needling him. He finally said, "I preferred my life over the blade. Still might be able to reclaim it if Castile marches us to hunt the summoner." Flavius was already dressed in his armor, and at the table in the room. "So you found the elven summer, Treliorn Kelrun?" Constantine moved to sit across from him. "No, I don't think so." The elf with the hellhounds appeared too young. Flavius was about to interject, but Constantine stopped him. "I know elves age really slowly. This one was young. He was no ancient and powerful sorcerer." Flavius grunted in acceptance of his words. I sat up in bed and looked out the window, and the sun was just turning the sky. I sighed and started dressing. I looked at Constantine. "I can't believe they healed you up, and you are ready to go again. The summoner is a real threat, Eric." Castile was doing a message sending to the Legatus Leganis office this morning. "Most likely they will order us after him," Constantine said seriously. Flavius nodded at the table in agreement. "So we need to get ready to fight more hellhounds?" "Is that how you were burned?" I inquired as I put on my armor. Constantine rubbed the side of his face, which had pink new skin. Don't know about more hounds. He held up his arm, and the memory of pain flashed on his face. Eyes. One grabbed my arm, and the other breathed fire on me. If I hadn't been able to douse myself in a nearby pond, I would be dead. Mavith boomed from across the room. Interested in the story. How did you escape? Constantine shifted in his seat at the table. I was looking at the summoner from a good mile away. He was setting up a ritual circle. I was deciding whether to try and sneak close and get him with my bow, when the two hounds I didn't see caught my scent from a cursed mile away. Constantine exhaled angrily. I dropped from the tree and ran. They caught me in no time, even though I was dropping myconid spores. One grabbed my arm while the other breathed its fire on me, drove my sword into the mouth of a breather. Had to let go due to the heat. The one biting my arm tried to go for my throat. He looked around at us. I was half on fire at this point, and the dog I was wrestling was unscathed. It was a struggle, but I got a dagger in its neck and forced myself into a pond to cool off. He chuckled dryly. Then you dragged yourself back here, Mavith said in awe. No, didn't quite kill the second. Swam across the pond and it stalked me, but it was bleeding out. Giant leeches in the pond forced me out. I was at a disadvantage without my bow or sword, but the hellhound didn't attack. I forced myself to run and figured the beast was smart as it tried to exhaust me. I hoped it would bleed out from the wound on its neck. Eventually, I won the contest of wills. Constantine did not sound smug, just exhausted at the retelling. We should get down to breakfast, or Benito will eat all the butter honey buns left over from the Duchess's dinner, Flavius noted. The four of us made our way to the barracks. I was half expecting to see the Countess's soldiers in here with us, but it was just our company. As Flavius had predicted, Benito had a plate stacked 3 high of the dessert buns, Blaze, next to him, the same. Everyone came up to Constantine and said they were glad he was already on his feet. Linus brought him 2 plates stacked with food. Constantine, no complaints. I want you to finish both plates before leaving the hall. You had a lot of healing done last night from the healer and potions. Where is my plate? I asked with a smirk at Linus. Next time you drag yourself in here half-burned with a dozen broken bones, I will get your food for you too. Linus returned with a mock challenge. I hope that day never comes, I said, headed to the buffet table with Mavith just took one of the serving trays from under the food as his plate, grinning while he did. From the look of it, the spread was mostly leftovers from last night's dinner in the Citadel, but no one seemed to mind. The Duchess still wanted to impress her mother even if she did not want her here. While we were stuffing our faces, Castile entered on her heels with Delmar and Adrian. She looked around the room and her face was stern and not happy. Adrian walked over to Flavius, and I heard them say, after Castile finishes, go head out and get the 4 men guarding the crew laying the province border stones. Flavius nodded sharply at the order. Castile addressed everyone present. I sent Constantine's report to the Legatus Leganus. He has ordered us to locate the Bardaradian summoner and end him. Master Mage Sebastian and 2 of his legionnaires will join us in 3 days on Drake's. The company stirred a little at the announcement. We will also be joined by High Mage Zyna, but she will bring no legionnaires. Sebastian will transport High Mage Zyna, and they will find us in the wilds. No hounds will be coming to help search for him. Flavius' eyes had snapped to Castile on Sebastian's name. I couldn't see his face to read his reaction to seeing Sebastian again. Castile continued as our company started whispering louder. We will leave after the midday meal. Delmar will get a loadout for your packs prepared. The summoner was last spotted 50 miles northwest of here. Is this normal? I asked Constantine, who was working on his second plate, and apparently already aware of what Castile was going to say. Hunting an enemy mage within the Empire borders? He asked with a cocked eyebrow, trying to act like I asked a stupid question. Flavius answered my question directly. Usually, it would be 3 full mage companies hunting an enemy mage, with 2 or 3 squads of hounds in support to track the mage. High Mage Zyna is a powerful battle-fire mage, but used to teach at the Mage College. I was not aware she could be called on for a hunt like this. Constantine added what he knew while shoveling food in his mouth. The hounds already lost a squad searching for the summoner. I am not surprised Cornelius is not sending help. He would only have 5 squads left in all the Eastern Empire. and I am sure he is being kept busy around Maka countering the Barteradian Rangers, Flavius exclaimed. Just 5. There should be 10 in the east. Constantine shrugged. I talked to him after Masha. He lost 2 squads chasing down a Rouge Mage commander before Maka. 1 squad retired a few months back, and another is not available. He has over 20 men in training. He gave me a sidelong glance. But none are ready to put into the field. Flavius relaxed some at the explanation. It is one of the most dangerous jobs in the Empire. Constantine just nodded but did not tell him he used to be a hound. But just 5 squads left. Flavius shook his head in disbelief and left. He had to make a long trek to get our men out supervising the digging of holes. I went to the tower with Maveth while Constantine was forced to stay behind and eat the rest of his food. I packed quickly, thinking we were going to be gone for a while. Maveth just watched me, and I tightly rolled one of the weasel pelts inside an oiled tarp I used for my tent. I asked him, "Are you not going to come?" Maveth sat on his bunk, sighing. I was not asked to go. I looked at him sharply. "Maveth, do you want to come and hunt a powerful mage that can summon creatures of nightmares and legends?" He put on a broad smile. Well, traveling with you is always interesting." He began to pack his things, and I shook my head in disbelief. If I had been given a choice, I most definitely would not be going. We arrived in the courtyard, and Delmar had bundled food for us, and a few changes of socks and undergarments. Matteo quipped at seeing the house guards of the Countess. Never got an apology from the Countess for kicking us out of our rooms. Everyone laughed merrily. Delmar smirked at Matteo's comment. "Why don't you carry the ration packs for the 4 men Flavius is retrieving?" He groaned as it was almost 40 pounds. He did not end up carrying it, as Felix, Maveth, and I each took one of the 4 bundles. We didn't have to wait long before Castile was outside with Adrian. Adrian arched an eyebrow at me. "Thought you would be riding your horse, Eric." "I can do that," I asked, ready to bolt for the stables and saddle Ginger. "Too late now," he smirked as he was clearly joking. Castile added seriously, "She would just be used to carry supplies. Eric, leave her behind. It is safer for her." That ended any argument. We were soon walking down the road northwest along the river. We were going to meet up with Flavius and the others before following Constantine into the wilds to find the elusive summoner. Raelia walked the promenade in the king's palace, following the mage. After being sent home by her brother from Maka, she spent 2 days recovering in the rookery. She had been mucking nests and showing the newest class of griffin riders how to care for their saddles and tack. Then news came of the Tellian ruthlessness. The mages of the Tellian Empire had torn down the city's outer walls with earthquakes. It was completely unexpected and devastating. She had been worried her brother had perished in the attack, but he had managed to retreat with remnants of the army. She had not seen him in the last 3 weeks, but at least she knew he was okay. She heard he was preparing the defenses in the city of Tanel near the border, as the Tellians had already marched on Garakas. Her anger at the news had made her put in a request for a new griffin, but she was denied. The Master Griffin Tamer told her she would have to spend the next 2 years cleaning and teaching before he would consider giving her another hatchling to raise. At first, she had been angry. The kingdom needed trained griffin riders, and she was trained, but then she was reminded how she had failed her mount. She wanted to get revenge on the Tellians, as many friends and comrades had been killed. She had been abused herself, taken captive by a legionnaire, and forced to attack one of her brother's bodyguards. She had been questioned by a number of mages at the Megascalarium, and had her ether resistance tested 5 times. One mage even checked to ensure she wasn't a doppelganger, as the idea that a legionnaire could force her into a dimensional space seemed too absurd. Maybe she could fight as a soldier or ranger, if it could not be in the skies. She had all the qualifications to be a ranger, and many griffin riders came from the rangers' ranks. She went to the Master Tamer and asked to be transferred. He looked disappointed, but granted her request the next day. She was assigned to the 14th Ranger Squad. She was frustrated to learn the 14th Rangers were assigned to Megascalarium. The Megascalarium was in the capital. It was a free magic school for anyone who had the potential to be a mage. Their sprawling campus outside the capital included 50,000 acres of woodland. The 14th Rangers patrolled this area. She later learned her brother had placed her there to protect her. This infuriated her, but she would do her duty, and look for a chance to fight the Tellians. Raelia's new commander was Jalan Luira. He was an ancient-looking human, quick. He must have been taking essences to maintain his youthful physique. Today, she was following Jalan to meet with the High Mage Traelion Kelran. She watched the young mage students wandering the campus, absorbed in their little world. Children, she must, not realizing a battle was happening just a few hundred miles to the west. They climbed one of the tallest towers in the mega scholarium. The circular stairs wrapped the outer wall with windows every 20 steps, she noted. The view rolled from the campus to the woods she presided over. They reached one of the upper floors, and the door was open. "Enter," a commanding voice sounded. "Enter." She followed Jalan inside. She was here to take notes and run messages if needed, not to participate. Raelia had never met the High Mage Traelion Kelran before, but she could feel the power oozing off him just seeing the powerful elf. He took up her concentration, and she missed the ice drake curled in the corner of the room. The white-scaled creature yawned, and its predatory fangs had her step back. Traelion laughed. "Girl, you're out. Girl, Kilma is about as dangerous as a puppy." "I don't think she has hunted a day in her life." The drake belched a cold mist toward the mage in a challenge. "Go, stretch your wings, Kilma. Your disrespect toward me is embarrassing me in front of my guests." The glistering white-scaled drake stood and unwound its body. Kilma was much larger than she had guessed. The drake was slowly stretched and then dove out a nearby window. Traelion shook his head. "Failed in taming that one, but she does make a good conversationalist." Raelia couldn't help but voice her disbelief. "You can talk to drakes." Jalan gave her a harsh look for breaking protocol in front of the High Mage. The High Mage laughed. "No, but that is the point. I have had a dozen wives in my life, and all we did was get into arguments. Kilma doesn't talk back, so I never lose the argument." Jalan shook his head. "He has been married thrice, Raelia. You will find our High Mage is prone to exaggerate everything. Now, Traelion, why did you request my presence? Do you need more ingredients for your summons?" "My apprentice just sent a communication. His 2 hellhound guards have been killed," the High Mage said seriously. "Is Veril injured?" the old ranger asked, concerned. "Do you need us to retrieve him?" "No. It was just a single scout. But now he has no protections while he sets up the next summons. I would like to portal one of your rangers to protect for the next month," Traelion requested. The old human huffed angrily. "The council does not agree with your methods, old friend. Putting your apprentice out in the Empire to summon and unleash beasts is a danger to him and innocent people." The air suddenly crackled with blue sparks. Traelion power emanated, and he screamed at the old ranger. "They killed my grandson in Maka. I would kill every citizen of the Empire if I could." The old ranger did not back down. "How many times are you and your apprentice going to open gates to elemental planes and other dangerous lands? One of these times, the creature you summon will be too strong for you to control. You cannot hide your fatigue from me, old man. Our days of saving the world are over. We are retired. Your grandson made his own choices." Raelia suddenly wished she could be anywhere but here. The mage could snuff out the ranger with a thought. The air slowly cleared, and they both calmed down. Raelia stepped forward unexpectedly. "I will go." Both sets of wizened eyes turned to her. Raelia stood tall. This was a chance for her to get back into the fight. Jalan said, "Your brother sent you to my care, Raelia. I will not send you to your death in the Tellian Empire." Raelia smirked as she was accustomed to using people's words against them. "You just said the High Mage's grandson made his own choice. I want to make my own choice." "I like this one, Jalan." The High Mage smiled, his blue eyes twinkling in victory. Jalan threw up his arms in disgust. He pointed at Raelia. "Burn her face into your mind. When word comes she is dead, know it was just as good as you doing the deed yourself. I am prepared to accept that. Leave her here, and I will help her prepare for her duty," the High Mage said gravely. Raelia felt she was slightly over her head. The High Mage addressed her after Jalan left angry. "You know he is right. I have sent more young men and women to their deaths than I can count to fight the Tellians. Every one of them is burned up here." He tapped his temple. I am willing. Feel no guilt, High Mage, Raelia reaffirmed. Your primary task will be to watch Veril while he is sleeping, he sighed. Let me see if I can find a few things in this mess to help you in your task. The old elf slowly went through his extremely disorganized closets. She was given a thermal stone fire starter, a wand of etheric missiles, 3 dungeon-grade healing potions, and a ring of sustenance. A fortune in artificed gear to help alleviate the summoner's guilt that he was sending her into severe danger. Later that evening, she was waiting on Raelia, who was gathering materials to summon a wyvern near the Tellian capital. An old human woman came into the office unannounced. She immediately started yelling at the High Mage. "You old geezer!" She walked up to him. "You are leaving again to summon one of your beasts." "My third wife," the High Mage told Raelia with a small smile. "You are in for a show, you idiot," the gray-haired woman continued. "Just let it be. Why don't you help the rest of the High Council figure out what in the Dragon's Fire the Tellians are up to south of Marka?" "I don't care," he rebuffed. "If the Emperor made an appearance there, then I might for a chance to snuff him out. Until then, I will show his people how inept he is at keeping them safe. If you confronted the Emperor, he would banish your soul to the void." The woman barked at him. She waved a finger at him angrily. She stormed out angrily after some more back and forth screaming. Raelia wished she could have faded into the wall during the screaming session. The white drake returned during the argument, and just ignored the 2 mages as it curled back into a ball and went to sleep. This seemed commonplace for it. Raelia slept in a room below, and the next morning, the High Mage opened a portal in his office. Raelia's mouth hung open in disbelief. How? It usually took a few mages together to open a portal. The High Mage winked. Lots of practice. Also, my apprentice has an anchor I can latch the portal to. Shall we? He gestured to the portal. Raelia picked up the heavy pack of food and gear and entered first. She appeared inside a cave with a young elf focused on a metal plate. The apprentice, Veril, was contributing his own ether to maintain the portal. His golden hair was matted with sweat, and his green eyes focused. Raelia walked through next, just in his mage robes. He turned and faced the portal and asked, "Well, are you coming? Or do I have to walk?" He sounded irritated, but the ice drake eventually emerged, and the portal snapped shut. Raelia stared at the Veril as he panted from the effort. Raelia seemed unconcerned as he looked around and nodded. "Veril, have you moved a good distance from where your pets were killed? She is a trained ranger and will be your protector." Raelia waved at the apprentice. He was kind of cute, and his deep green eyes were mesmerizing. He did not seem as impressed with her. Raelia continued, "I am heading north to summon another wyvern. I want you to summon some hill giants and send them," he considered for a moment, "send them in the direction of the scout that killed your hounds." The apprentice nodded happily. "How many hill giants?" he asked as the High Mage was mounting the ice drake. "2. You cannot handle any more than 2, he advised, and then was in the air. Raelia marveled that he did not need a saddle to ride the drake. Veril looked her over and sighed, disappointed his protector was a young female elf. Raelia read his eyes. "I'm a skilled ranger, and used to be a griffin rider." He cocked an eyebrow and slowly nodded appreciatively. "Good. Come. We have a few miles to walk, and I will be setting up a summoning circle while you watch my back." The pair started walking, and Raelia started up a conversation with the young mage. It was unsurprising that they were almost the same age. Raelia thought this was going to be a good assignment. She would help get revenge on the Tellians, and maybe she would make a new friendship. The march on the road was mostly orderly. We kept 3 men abreast, spaced 10 feet apart, with Castile, Adrian, and Delmar leading. We passed refugees headed to Sobril every few hours. The refugees found the most interesting thing about our company was Mavith. I had Mavaith on my left and Brutus on my right, so it felt like every refugee was also staring at me. It felt like it had been a long time being part of the company since I had worked in small groups and foraged for the alchemist. The voices of everyone around me blended in a comforting background noise. I noticed we had no scouts out as Constantine was walking next to Firth, 2 rows ahead. Mavith was walking and working on sewing in the white leather lining to the manticore pouch. I didn't have the heart to tell him I didn't need it, After all, I had a dimensional space. We had marched about a dozen miles when 5 legionnaires were sitting in the road ahead. It was Flavius and the men he had been tasked with retrieving: Pascal, Remus, Cyrus, and Soren. Remus was the only legionnaire from Mage Gregor's company that had survived Masha. He kept to himself, and I couldn't imagine how he felt losing his mage and everyone in his company. He was also easy to identify when we had our helms off, as he was the ginger in the company. The 5 men were sitting on stacks of large blocks of rough-cut white marble on the side of the road, and I could see a well-worn path heading into the woods. It looked like these were the province markers the men had been burying in the ground for weeks. 2 buried markers on either side of the road reinforced my guess. This must be where they started the project and delivered cut marble from the quarry. I did not see the point of all this effort to place these markers, but I guessed rich people in every world like to remind people what was theirs. We paused for a snack, and Blaze sat with Mavith, Brutus, and myself. "So those are the stones you have been burying in the ground. They look heavy." I patted the marble I was sitting on. Each marble block was roughly 1 foot square and 3 feet in length. "Those blocks weigh as much as 4 men. You gotta laze about and walk in the woods while we did all the real work, Eric," Blaze said with a half-smile. Mavith thought to inform him, and maybe he was defending me a little. "Eric has been fighting manticores, ettins, and goblins." "How many creatures have you killed since arriving, Brutus?" Brutus laughed. "No need to take things so literally, Goliath. I was joking. Everyone in the company knows if there is danger on the horizon, it is best to keep your distance from Eric, as it will surely find him." Mavith nodded slowly. "Do not worry, Eric. If danger finds you, I will stand beside you to face it," Brutus laughed. "You may not quite get humor, Mavith, but at least you are good at checkers." Mavith reached for his pack. "I brought the game board. Do you want to play?" We all laughed, and after Brutus lost a game of checkers, Castile had us headed into the woods. Flavius and Constantine took off ahead of us, and I walked to Adrian and asked, should Mavith and I be scouting as well? Adrian looked to Castile, who gave a sharp nod. "No, with Flavius back, you don't need to. But with your new air shield, we would like to keep you close to Castile. I typically protect her right side and Delmar her left. We want you to protect her rear." I nodded in understanding. "So, should I be marching with you then?" "At the front," Adiran confirmed. "When the sense of danger is in the air, yes." Mavith was behind me and asked in his baritone, "What do you want me to do?" I told Eric I would stand with him. Delmar turned his head to look at us as he walked next to Castile. "You can cover him with that monstrous bow of yours." Mavith nodded, happy at the answer, and continued to focus on finishing the pouch. For having such large hands, he was making such fine work in the stitching. The path was well trodden as they had carted dozens of stones into the woods. The men behind him were joking about the effort, and how the donkey cart they used was constantly getting stuck. The stones were buried with only about 12 inches showing. The white marble tops made a clear dotted line in the landscape. As we walked deeper, Flavius and Constantine rotated back to the company. Being closer to Castile, I could overhear their reports. They mostly reported what type of tracks they found. So far, nothing dangerous. As evening settled, we made camp in a clearing, and 2 long strips of white tarp were staked into the ground. Making an ex-Castile watched them work and informed me, "That is for Master Mage Sebastian. He is not due for a few days, but we will put it out when we stop to rest and camp. It has a light ether signature to it, so he can find it easily when he overflies it." "How will we fight alongside drakes?" I asked as I unpacked my bedroll and tarp. "We won't. They will be in the air, covering us and scouting. High Mage Zyna will join us on the ground for the real fight." Castile relayed tacturdly. I hesitated momentarily before asking, "Do I have anything to worry about?" Castile looked at me, not from Zyna. She, like me, was a plebeian before attending the Mage College. She completed her service quite some time ago. "I think she has a manor in a coastal town somewhere." "And from Sebastian?" I pressed. Castile looked into the woods where Flavius was circling the camp in the opposite direction of Constantine. "He is unpredictable. Knowing his temper, I am surprised Flavius returned to us. Keep your distance from him. I will shield you if I can. I nodded and thanked Castile before setting up my tarp tent. Maveth had a tarp, but chose to sleep under the stars since the buggy season had passed. After dinner, I lost a game of checkers to Maveth and went to sleep. I was asleep for maybe 4 hours before someone was kicking my boot. I was instantly awake and putting on my helm. Felix smirked. All is fine. Eric, your turn for watch. I groaned as I had forgotten that I would be part of the night watch rotation since I was no longer scouting. I was paired with Pavel, and we took the positions and huddled in our cloaks to keep the body heat trapped inside. It was cold enough tonight to see our breath form a cloud on exhaling. Pavel had a Legion cloak, and I had my black manticore cloak. It did a much better job retaining warmth. I would roll it up and send it to my dimensional storage after the watch to minimize wear and tear. Pavel was not much of a conversationalist. He was also struggling to stay awake. The only excitement all night was a normal owl swooping down and catching a rodent of some type. I slept another few hours and was up before dawn and packing. Lurkin fed the company, and we continued our trek, following Constantine toward the last place he had seen the elven summoner. During our afternoon break, Maveth proudly presented the manticore sack to me. He had dyed it black to match my cloak. It was large enough for me to squeeze both hands inside our Maveth's single hand. It looked exceptional, except I knew where it had come from. Maveth excitedly explained, I used the ice drake hide for its natural chilling properties. It can keep herbs you gathered potent for much longer. The manticore leather should be able to take a pounding but still last you a lifetime. I have seen warriors in my village pass one down for generations. It is fantastic, supple, and smooth, Maveth. Your effort and care in making it will cause me to treasure it always. I studied it for a moment longer under his watchful eye, and then sent it to my dimensional space, I explained. This way, it will not get ruined while I am fighting. The second night in the woods, Constantine had us be more cautious. He estimated we were about 15 miles from where he found the summoner. Castile ordered the camp to be made and informed everyone that we would wait here until Master Mage Sebastian and High Mage Zyna arrived, rather than risk an engagement without their support. Maveth noted the weasel den was probably in this area. Delmar barked with a smile at the news. Since we have a few hours of daylight and do not know how long we will be here, I want a trench line dug there and there, he pointed. We were on a small hill clear of trees, so at least the ground would be free of roots. We spent 6 hours digging 2 defense trenches at right angles and staking them. We were also given assigned sleeping areas by Delmar. It almost felt like he was trying to get more rigid with the camp to show off to the 2 arriving mages. The regular army would construct elaborate camps every night when they marched. Small mage companies, not so much. Everyone except me was used to digging from the last few weeks. Digging blisters were different from weapon blisters on the hands, and I voiced a vocal dissent to the work. Of course, I would heal them just enough tonight so they would not bother me. Maveth joined us but was relegated to rolling large rocks out of the ditch for us. The company cleaned up in a stream, and I was fortunate to get the first watch this evening. It was early in the night when the familiar 2 bangs of warning came. The camp was roused, and Firth, who had been on the other side, informed Delmar that he had spotted one of the giant weasels. Beast was bigger than a horse, and moved just as fast. Firth told the awakened men, and prepared company. Everyone looked to Castile. She closed her eyes and sent out her all-seeing eye. I knew it could be seen in the dark, and we waited. A few moments later she spoke. 2 giant weasels are moving away from our camp, Maveth said. They are smart creatures and would not attack our camp with so many men. I just suggest no one wanders in the woods alone at night to relieve themselves. Adrian nodded. A thank you to Maveth. We will double the guard. Some men groaned as going from 6 to 12 meant most of us would get half as much sleep. Clouds rolled in, covering the moon and making it extremely dark for the remainder of the night, and light stones were placed out in the woods. It was a relief when the morning came. Delmar had us finishing the defensive square after breakfast, and no one complained. We now had a square camp on top of a hill about 40 feet to a side. The ditch was just 3 feet deep, but had a stake every foot. As we were eating lunch prepared by Lurkin, a chunky potato, and salted beef soup, Blaze pointed to the skies. Drake! I looked up and saw the silhouette. I had no idea how he saw something so small. Then I spotted 2 others trailing the first. They passed our camp, and I thought they missed the large white X at our center. but they soon started circling above our camp. My heart was racing at the possibility of confronting Master Mage Sebastian and him, accusing me of having his brother's collector. I caught Flavius sneaking glances at me, which did not help my comfort level. The drakes circled for an hour, slowly descending from their heights. Castile was standing next to me and noted, "He is scouting around our camp, but also, I think he is drawing it out to make us wait." "Who is on the other 2 drakes?" I inquired. "2 of his legionnaires. Probably drake tamers from his estate. The Emperor rarely has Sebastian help with missions. He contributes a lot by raising the fire drakes for the Dragon Legion," Castile stated. Castile looked up and suddenly smirked. "If he doesn't land soon, I think Zyna is going to throw him off." I looked and could see the largest drake, which had 1 person riding a pillion. I guess Castile was using her all-seeing eye to spy on them. The smaller drakes landed at the bottom of our little hill. The largest drake landed in our midst. The powerful wings blew tarp tents and sleeping rolls everywhere. I could tell that Master Mage Sebastian had intended the dramatic effect. He silled out of his saddle to the ground, smiling smugly. His grand entrance made, he addressed Castile imperiously. "Mage Castile, it seems it has become a habit of mine to come and rescue you." The woman behind him dismounted less gracefully, and her legs were a little weak from the ride. The woman did not look like a wizened old mage. Her auburn hair was braided into a long ponytail. Her light brown eyes were lively. She appeared middle-aged, maybe in her late 30s, and was one of the tallest women I had seen in my time, nearly matching my 6 on a frame. She ignored Sebastian and came to Castile and gave her a hug to Sebastian's consternation. "Castile, my child, it has been ages. You have never visited my estate." Master Mage Sebastian frowned at being ignored, but if my understanding was correct, then she outranked him as a high mage. His drake bristled, shaking itself out and mimicking its master's dissatisfaction. Castile broke the hug. "My company was never sent on assignment near your coastal town, Baroness. If she was a baroness, then she was also a first citizen." "But I thought Castile said she grew up poor." Zyna turned to Sebastian. "You and your men should finish that patrol I interrupted by insisting you land. You said scouting the entire region before you landed was important." There was some terseness in her words. Sebastian ground his teeth. "Ice High Mage." Castile and Zyna moved off to talk privately, walking outside our fortification. I slowly moved back from the giant flying lizard, now that Castile was no longer at my side. Dragons and I did not mix. Sebastian led his drake through our barricade, destroying some of it, and down to the stream to let the drake drink before heading into the sky with his 2 men. A handful of men were at the water, Flavius among them. I was sure I noticed him and Flavius make eye contact for more than a moment while the drake satiated its thirst. My paranoid self was sure it would not be long before Sebastian took a detour to question me about his brother's death. I watched the 3 drakes getting water while Sebastian conferred with his 2 legionnaire riders. I just had a bad feeling about this whole situation. Adrian called to me. "Eric, Castile and the High Mage wish for you to join their conversation." I looked to see them at the bottom of the hill opposite the stream. I wondered what this was going to be about. I had been ordered to talk with Castile and the High Mage, who seemed familiar with each other. I walked down the hill from our camp, stepping between the stakes. Castile was a head shorter than the auburn-haired High Mage. They both turned and faced me in unison. Castile introduced the mage. "This is High Mage Zyna, Mistress of Fire, Baroness of Piscatio, a small village on the northern coast." Zyna looked me up and down and extended her hand. We formally shook wrists, and the formality confused me. She asked, "This is him? He's a big boy but looks young and inexperienced. If he's going to watch my back, is he any good?" Castile smirked. "As good as any as Delmar or Adrian. He has a decent air shield spell form as well as a dimensional space." The High Mage arched her eyebrow, reassessing her initial appraisal of me. Castile addressed me. "While Zyna is with us, you will be her personal guard." My surprised look had her explain further. "High Mage Zyna outranks Sebastian, so as long as you are in her service, he cannot command or question you." I was confused, but understood this was a way to protect me. Did that mean Castile trusted Zyna? I tried to sound happy at the assignment and asked the High Mage, "Should I call you Mistress, Baroness, or High Mage?" Zyna laughed, amused with a musical voice. "Just Zyna is fine, Legionnaire Eric. I no longer teach at the Mage College or command a Legionnaire company. My first citizen status is only so the Emperor could continue to call on my skills when needed." "So that is why you are here? The Emperor called on you?" I asked and realized perhaps I had overstepped. Zyna pursed her lips in anger and I got worried. "I volunteered," she said tersely. "The small fishing community where my estate is located was inundated with giant waves. 24 of my people were killed, and most of the fishing boats were destroyed. I am here to get some revenge on the elven summoner who summoned the water elemental that caused the disaster." Her eyes took on a blue glow of aether that tinged with red, and I could feel her aether stirring violently in her core. This little display showed me why she was considered a high mage. The flare of volatile power disappeared as quickly as it had come. Castile nodded to me and left me with Zyna. "What do you need me to do for you, Zyna?" I asked with as much respect as I could weave into the words. It was definitely not because I sensed her oppressing power a few moments ago. We must wait for Sebastian to give us a marching direction. "Show me to your tent until then." She waved her hand up the hill at our square fortification. I led her up the hill and showed her my tarp tent in the camp. It was very simple, with thick poles cut from branches forming 3 A-frames at the ends and middle. The tarp was staked over the frames. One end was open, and the other was closed. My weasel pelt was laid out on top of my Legion-issued bedroll. She assessed the space, and I was worried she was either going to be sharing it with me or kicking me out. It would be a tight fight for 2 people, but doable. "It has been a few years since I camped on the march. You can set up my tent next to yours," Zyna informed me, and before I could ask where her tent was, a large backpack hit the ground with a thud. My mind raced, and I put it together quickly. "You have a dimensional space." Zyna smiled. "Not a spell form like you, Eric." She tapped a ring on her finger. "A dungeon artifice storage ring. Works the same way as your spell form, and it is twice the size of yours," she said with a smirk. Mavith, who had been watching from a distance, approached. "High Mage, can I interest you in a game of checkers while Eric sets up your tent?" "Mavith, wouldn't you rather help me set this up?" I indicated the large, tightly wrapped tent. "No, the Goliath assessed my task. I would rather play checkers with a more challenging opponent." Brutus, Mavith's usual opponent, huffed from a 12 feet away. Zyna smiled at our playful interaction, but then sided with the Goliath. "Friend Goliath, I would be honored to play a game of checkers with you." They moved off to some logs and a makeshift stone table in the camp that the others cleared for the High Mage as she approached. The drakes took to the skies from the stream and began their search while the Mavith and Zyna set up the board. Brutus came to my aid and helped with the tent. It was a large tent, requiring a 12 8-foot poles to be cut to assemble it. Thankfully, Brutus was familiar with the style. The final assembly gave the High Mage a roughly 8-foot cubic tent out of the oiled canvas material. There was a square floor panel as well, but no bedroll. Mavith and Zyna had a lively conversation during their game nearby, and I was worried that the Goliath might have retold about my prowess with the manticores. With the tent finished, Zyna approached, nodded in thanks, and entered. She left the flaps shut for privacy. Maybe she had more space in her ring and was laying out a luxurious interior. Mavith sat with me. She is a charming woman. She even won one of our 6 games. Constantine and Flavius had taken down a large deer for dinner. The best cuts were for the men, while the remainder would go to the drakes. When Lurkin had dinner prepared, Castile brought a portion into Zyna's tent and did not exit before the sun was setting. We were waiting for the return of the drakes. They returned just after sunset, and Sebastian landed his drake again in the middle of camp. I think he was attempting to blow over Zyna's tent, but Brutus and I had double-staked it. The men in the camp had done the same to their own tents, expecting the childishness of the master mage. Not one tent was blown away this time, which seemed to make him upset. Sebastian entered the tent unannounced, and the conversation was obviously being muted by magic. We all looked at each other, not knowing what to expect. Everyone kept their distance from his drake, which appeared tired and curled into a ball. Lurkin came and gave it a haunch of the deer, and it greedily ate it. The crunching of bones was not something I enjoyed being so close to. It was a good hour before Sebastian emerged unhappy. He gave me a hard look before leading his drake down to the stream, where the other 2 drakes had already been unsaddled and fed. Adrian and Delmar were called into the tent. When they left at dark, Delmar went to bring Castile's things to the tent while Adrian gave orders. The master mage did not find any sign of the summoner. We will be marching northwest in the morning, following Constantine. The drakes will keep watch from above. Everyone felt better knowing the 3 powerful drakes would be overhead, but I was not so certain. That night, there was a commotion in the woods. The loud squealing, hissing and sounds of combat woke the entire camp, and Constantine went down and came back to report. The drakes killed one of the giant weasels. They are feasting on it now. Should quiet it down in an hour. Maveth seemed upset. Waste of a good pelt. Should have skinned it first. The following morning we packed up camp and I struggled to get Zyna's tent rolled tightly enough to be returned to her dimensional ring. Maveth and Brutus had to assist me. When we marched, Brutus and I were on either side of Zyna with Maveth behind us. After a few hours of Maveth and Zyna discussing different board games, I asked, "How do you know Castile?" Zyna smiled. "I was an instructor at the Mage College, finishing my own service to the Empire when Castile started there. Those not of royal blood tend to have a difficult time. I mentored her and helped her through acclimate. I am the reason she chose the Legion over serving Duke Octavian." Blaze and Wiley in front of us couldn't help but turn around in shock at the gossip, but quickly focused forward. Zyna just smiled. Maveth, unaware of human decorum regarding age, asked, "If a mage is required to serve 20 years, and Castile is almost done with her service, does that make you 60? You do not look it." Maveth liked to puzzle things out, and this was not something he should have tried. I reflexively stepped away from the mage, and Brutus did likewise on the other side of the high mage. Zyna just laughed her musical laugh. "Maveth, I am 83. I served 26 years as a mage commander and 24 years at the Mage College. After 50 years of service, the Emperor granted me the writ of Prima Civis, making me one of the few to be named a first citizen without the blood of the First Legion in my veins." Maveth grunted. "I would not have guessed you for being older than 40, 30, Maveth," Constantine said it, appearing from the woods. "If you are dumb enough to guess a woman's age, always guess 10 years younger than you think. She won't burn you to a crisp if you are wrong," I added my wisdom. "Maveth, it is best never to guess at all," Zyna laughed. "Maybe, but I have seen enough for 2 lifetimes, and someone asking my age is not going to upset me much. And the Emperor does grant favors if you are useful enough to keep around." Constantine walked next to Zyna. "Hi, Mage, I was training your bodyguard in the finer arts of scouting. I would hate for his skills to get rusty. Do you mind?" Zyna nodded. "Just do not wear him out, hound." "I am no longer a hound, High Mage," Constantine grumbled. It appeared that these 2 knew each other as well. "What does Cornelius always say? Once a hound, always a hound," Zyna replied. "That old goat says a lot of things. Sometimes I think he just likes to hear himself speak," Constantine grumbled. "Come on, Eric. I found some interesting tracks that I want to show you." When we got off into the woods, Constantine showed me some bear tracks and old knoll tracks. We worked our way on the right side of the column while Flavius was on the left. Constantine seemed a little anxious about this quest, and I finally asked him when we stopped to take a break while the company caught up. "You don't appear to be your normal cheerful self, Constantine. What has got you on edge?" I said, chewing on some jerky. "When you are hunting mages, nothing ever goes as planned. I do feel better with Zyna here. Just hope she doesn't burn down the woods while we are in them," he said, sipping water. "With a summoner, you never know what type of creature they may have summoned as well. Also," he paused, "there may be more than one summoner. I only saw the young elf, but that does not mean there are not more." I finished the afternoon with Constantine, and we found another hill for the company to make camp on. Delmar wanted trenches dug again, so we stopped with a few hours of daylight. Since I had scouted for half the day, Adrian informed me I was off trench and guard duty tonight. Scouts did travel 2 to 3 times the distance of the rest of the company. I still had to set up Zyna's tent. Maveth helped this time. We had not staked it yet when Master Mage Sebastian landed in our midst. The tent was blown away, and he dismounted smugly. He went to Castile and Zyna with purpose. The summoner just summoned 2 hill giants 20 or so miles west of your position. If you hurry, you can catch him before he relocates. Adrian approached. Night hike with 2 hill giants in the woods is not advisable. If we are going to fight them, I would want it to be in the light of day. Not your decision, Legionnaire, Sebastian barked at Adrian. Not yours either, Zyna said forcibly. Sebastian narrowed his eyes at the woman who was deciding on a plan of action. Zyna finally said, "We will leave at midnight. That will give Castile's men some time to rest and should put our encounter with the giants after sunrise." Sebastian was not happy and growled out, "We will rotate watch during the night on the giants. The summoner will not be trackable from the air." He mounted his drake and took to the air, blowing the camp into more of a mess. I turned to Maveth. "Just how many frigging kinds of giants are there?" I had asked my question about the variety of giants to be rhetorical, but Maveth answered me anyway. "The Titans come in many varieties. There are the cloud and fog giants of the Dressemere Mountains, then the corrupted 2-headed Edens, but you are familiar with them already. The stone giants are builders but are nearly extinct as all the great Titan cities have been destroyed. The storm giants ruled all the giants before the Civil War ages ago. The hill and mountain giants are cruel warriors, and the most populous of the giant kin. They are both solitary from other races and live in tribes." Maveth counted on his hands, trying to remember. Yes. The frost giants live in the harsh, cold north, but they keep to themselves. They do not like outsiders. "You forgot the fire giants," Zyna said, having overheard our conversation. "The fire giants love battle more than anything, and are always looking for a reason to engage. Why haven't the giants taken over the world?" Benito entered the conversation as he was untangling the tangled mess from the drake's buffeting takeoff. Zyna shrugged. "I have not studied the histories, but I think the Titans once ruled all of Dizia." Maveth nodded. "They did. The storm giants were similar to your first citizens. They governed all the giant races. Goliaths used to be bloodbound to the stone giants, and helped them build the world's marvels. Tales are passed down in my tribe before the schism and civil war among the Titans. The giant races fought and destroyed each other all across the land. None of their great cities stand today." I kept my mouth shut. Maveth looked at Benito. "To answer your question, all the Titans are cursed. Not only is conceiving children extremely difficult for most of them, but it takes over 50 years for them to mature. Some of them have other permanent maladies. For instance, the hill giants have the mentality of 3 years old," Benito quipped. "I have met some pretty smart 3-year-olds. Adrian grunted at Benito and didn't comment on Benito's intelligence assessment. "Most of the giant races are hunted in Dizia as well," Adrian added. "Don't bother setting the tents. Just get some rest. This night march is going to be taxing, and there is a fight at the end." We cleaned up the camp from Sebastian's landing and packed our backpacks. Zyna had a small tarp and laid it down a few feet from my bedroll. Zyna had no problem appearing to fall asleep, and I guess, as her temporary bodyguard, I needed to keep an eye on her while she slept in the open. I set my bedroll against a stump to use as a reclining chair. Salted fish that had been boiled into a vegetable soup. Sometimes you have to eat things that are unappetizing to keep your calories up. This was not one of those times. I poured my bowl of soup down a hole in the stump I was sitting on. Hopefully, whatever creature made its home down there would like it more than me. I took out some hard salami and cheese from my dimensional space when it got dark and before the blue moon revealed itself. I ate more than I should have, but doubted there was going to be a chance to eat again before the battle. I watched our camp be restless all night, as it was the eve of battle. When Delmar called for the march to begin, we all moved slowly, not looking forward to facing the hill giants. Maveth had chosen to stay on the other side of High Mage Zyna, which I greatly appreciated. The blue moon had decided to show itself, and the cloudless sky gave the woods an eerie blue light. A single glow was carried by the last man, Matteo, in our line. This was so the drakes could find us from above. Progress was slow, and Constantine and Flavius were leading us. I only saw a drake silhouetted on the blue moon once on the march when we passed through a clearing. I felt better knowing we had 3 ferocious beasts overhead. Some men whispered back and forth as we made our way. High Mage Zyna then asked a question I always dreaded hearing. "Eric, you are from Singa. I love their national delicacy, caramel bread. It is pronounced caramel in my small village. We only had it on special occasions as there were only a few goats from which to get milk," I replied smoothly. I had the name of the village ready if she pressed. "Oh, so you know how to make it then. After we finish this hunt, I may spend a few days in Sobral," Zyna said excitedly. I was not sure if she was being genuine or if she was trying to entrap me. At least there was a recipe for the bread in one of the books in the dreamscape. "I would like to try it too," Mavaith said in his deep voice, overshadowing the whispering. Mavaith realized his error, but he could not whisper well. But he tried talking softer. "I heard it is an amazing dessert. Melts in your mouth and is salty, savory, and sweet all at once." Zyna didn't pry into my past again, but tried for my other secrets. "Castile wouldn't tell me if you had any spell forms other than your storage and air shield." When I didn't respond, she tried in a motherly tone. "I have instructed hundreds of mages at the Mage College. Do you require any assistance in learning spell forms?" I considered my response and tempered it. "No, Castile has helped with everything that is needed. My aether shaping is too terrible to learn to cast spells." A plume of fire in the sky appeared a few miles off. "Are they fighting in the sky?" Blaze asked no one in particular as we all stared. Zyna replied hotly, "No, they found the hill giants and are marking them for us." Felix responded from behind me, "But that means we won't be able to surprise them." He basically signaled that someone found them. Zyna huffed angrily. "I think that is the point Sebastian's way of showing his displeasure at not making the decisions." "Come, Eric, we will move to the front." The giants looked to be just 2 miles away. I nodded, but decided I did not want to be the bodyguard of a high mage if they were always at the front. We moved forward, and Adrian hissed, "Pile your packs here. We are close." The 23 men of the company quickly and quietly dropped their packs. Everyone was on high alert for the sight and sound of the enemy. The blue gloom lighting from the moon made it easy to see movement, but if something remained still, they would blend in. Castile was at the front and using her spells. Zyna put her hand on Castile's shoulder and leaned in. "Do you see them? Do you see them?" Castile did not respond for a moment. Then she pointed. "There, the giants are gathering rocks. They are throwing them at the drakes." A crash far away could heard as a wayward rock landed deep in the woods. It caused all the creatures to go silent as more rocks returned to the earth. Delmar muttered from my right, "They are not going to be able to hit anything, but then again, they are not the smartest of creatures. They will keep trying." Zyna advised, "We will use this as a distraction. Archers behind me as I move to engage. Castile, stay back and be prepared to help if needed." Castile frowned in the moonlight, but nodded. "Shield bearers, be prepared to allow the archers to retreat between you. Spearmen support the shield men if the giants charge." That was all the orders she gave, as she walked confidently forward. I was on her heels and Mavaith on mine. Our armor made rasping sounds as the hard leather rubbed as we walked, but I had practiced with Constantine and Mavaith, and I was fairly silent. Constantine appeared from behind a tree. "High Mage, there are just 2 of them that we can tell. Both are adult males. Before they were disturbed by the drakes, they were eating a bear carcass, throwing rocks the size of a man's head into the sky," Constantine replied, and I looked up reflexively. Over our heads, we had a thinning canopy of fall leaves, but the sky was still obscured. A flash through the leaves told me Sebastian was taunting the hill giants. "Any signs of the summoner?" Zyna inquired. "None," was all Constantine said as he focused on where the giants were. "Lead me to them then. We can kill the hill giants and see if we can find the trail of the summoner," Zyna said determinedly. "You make it sound so easy," I muttered softly. Constantine tittered at me. "Oh, Eric, you are about to see a light show. You will see why they call her a high mage." We followed Constantine down a rocky stream bed that gave us some cover. We had timed our march fairly well, and the coming morning sun was teasing its arrival, graying the sky. I could see the 3 drakes high in the air circling. A rock was being tossed in their direction every few moments. The hill giants could barely reach them with the 100-pound spheres. At least they were distracting the giants from our approach. Zyna stood and marched up onto the small hill. I was unprepared for her boldness, but I stayed by her side. The archers were already formed, 7 men ready with their bows. Constantine and Flavius had moved into their ranks, 6 men with body shields behind them. When I cleared my line of sight, I was disturbed to see the 16-foot hill giants. They were on an exposed, rocky hillside for easy access to their ammunition. They looked overweight and childlike as they bent over and dug in the rocky ground for a fist-sized rock to throw. One grabbed a smaller rock by mistake and flung it disgusted at the drakes. Being smaller, it was flung further and faster. By some miracle, the stone connected with the wing of a drake, a hissing scream of pain as the drake spiraled to the ground. Unfortunately, it was not Sebastian's, as the largest drake remained aloft. The giants had not even noticed us as they raced to the falling drake. I felt the ground tremble as they ran. Zyna cursed, "Hades, take him! They are rushing out of my range, and that rider is as good as dead if they reach him." She turned. "Form the archers on that hill over there. I will see if I can draw them back to us." She ignored the men and started casting small dart-sized flames at the backs of the running giants. The darts flashed across the vast distance to the target, homing in and connecting. Dozens of darts sprayed at the giants. It seemed to be causing minor burning marks on their backs. That was the unusual thing. These giants were wearing some semblance of clothes. They looked ragged, but they were wearing some heavy cloth or hide. One of the giants swatted his back like he was swatting a mosquito. He howled, realizing his back was on fire. Zyna steadily advanced on the giants, closing the distance while the archers got the higher ground. Both giants stopped and helped each other put out the flames. Zyna ordered, "Arrows!" She stopped her own assault. I stood to her right, and Navith towered behind us. The twang of his large bow was heard behind me. The giants were a good 300 feet away as our 7 archers fired a steady stream. Half the arrows connected with the behemoths. The giants helped each other with the flames, ignoring the arrows momentarily. They soon realized they were being attacked. These giants seemed obvious to the world, and could only focus on one task at a time. Mavith had said their mental capacity was limited. I thought they would charge our position, but they just bent over and started hurling rocks at our archers. "Curses!" Zyna spat. She started moving forward to get them in range of her magic. I moved with her, ready to use my air shield. Before we got in range, a rock hit Quentin in the torso. "Is it, butter? I take cover!" Zyna screamed as a weave of fire formed between her hands. I was not sure if she was talking to me or the archers. I remained at her side and was fascinated as the head of a fiery snake formed and snaked into the sky. The snake quickly grew in size, and the giants were fascinated as it twisted in the air, growing larger and larger, being fed by Zyna's ether. This is what truly powerful magic was. I could feel its heat even 50 feet away from the massive fire snake. The snake twisted in the air and dove at one of the giants, opening its flaming maw. The giant held up his hands in protection, but nothing could stop the magic as the snake swallowed him and slammed into the ground. A pillar of flame erupted as the giant was burned alive. His fatty body melted, and the fat fueled the flames more. He howled only for a moment as the flame penetrated his lungs and burned them as well. The other giant stumbled away but knew where the giant snake had come from. He slung a rock at Zyna. I was prepared and had an angled air shield in front of her. The rock deflected into the sky, destroying the shield but saving her life. "Thank you," was all Zyna said as she weaved her next spell between her hands. A large, flaming ball appeared over her head and sped toward the giant just 100 feet away. The ball struck him and exploded. A blast of heat hit me, drying my eyes and throat and bringing the smell of burning pork to my nostrils. The explosion knocked the massive hill giant down, and his clothes were burned to his flesh. He staggered to his feet, howling in pain, and he was now clearly blinded, and his corneas had been burned out. "Archers!" Zyna called. Constantine was the first to start firing, followed by Mavith, and the others. The giant ran blindly forward, trying to escape. The arrows had trouble penetrating his thick clothing and fatty tissue. He stumbled and fell and stood, trying to figure a direction away from the attacks. The archers began targeting its head, and it used its burned hands to protect its face. The problem was the archers were close, and not many were missing. The behemoth howled in pain and frustration. It almost made you feel sorry for it. Zyna, drenched in sweat from her powerful castings, formed one more spell in her hand. A much smaller version of the snake raced away from her and consumed the head of the hill giant, forcing itself into its mouth and ending its suffering and its horrid cries. I looked on in horror as it struggled to breathe. "Do not feel sorry for it," Zyna stated, seeing my face. "Those giants eat humans, preferably raw and still alive." The body churned only for a brief moment before stilling. Zyna turned to me, appreciative but smugly. "Thank you for the shield." "Thank you for the shield." I had a defense ready for the rock, but I appreciate the thought. The company joined us on the open field. Quentin had been killed, and his body was brought down, his entire right rib cage missing. Quentin had been one of Doranda's men. That meant he had been a Legion volunteer and not conscripted. He had been on the road guarding our gear while we attacked the storm giant. I don't know how well he adapted to our less structured company, but it was sad to see another comrade fall. Zyna and Castile moved off to talk while some men went to retrieve our packs. Some men buried Quentin, and some worked to start preparing camp. I looked at the charred corpses and wondered if they would yield an essence. I didn't have time to think more of it as Sebastian's large drake landed on the first body and took a massive bite out of it like it was enjoying a pig roast. It was like he was claiming it as his kill. Then Sebastian took out a collector and placed it on the body, activating it. It was a large collector similar to the shield-sized one Castile used to own. An essence formed, but I could not distinguish it from this distance. I was a little angry that Zyna and Castile were allowing this. He let his drake feed and collected an essence from the second hill giant. He then walked to Zyna and unhappily handed her both essences. That was a relief. They exchanged some heated words, and Sebastian walked into the woods to find his downed drake and rider. Delmar turned and announced to the company, "We camp here till midday. After the midday meal, we march in search of the summoner. Constantine, Flavius, and Eric, go search for signs." Constantine smiled at me. "Come, Eric, let's go work on your tracking skills." "Damn it," volunteered again. I started to walk with Constantine when Zyna halted me. "Eric, good job protecting me. Castile suggested I give you one of these as a reward." She placed an essence in my hand. "Don't get yourself killed," she smiled, and returned to talk with Castile, Delmar, and Adrian. Constantine walked beside me as we entered the woods. Flavius was already ahead of us to the left. When everyone was out of earshot, Constantine asked, "You know I serve a Praetorian guard?" I cautiously replied. "I do. She has tasked me with keeping an eye out for potential, and you have drawn her attention," he said to silence. "It would mean spending a few years in the hounds as preparation. I will tell her you declined her offer." I did not reply. Constantine added, "It is what I would have advised you anyway. No matter how appealing they make it sound, it is a life service. If she asks you personally, tell her I asked you and offered you 10,000 gold for 10 years of service, but you still decline." I laughed internally, then aloud. 10,000 gold does not do you much good if you are dead," Constantine smirked. "I keep telling people you are not as dumb as you act. Now, tracking the hill giants to where they were summoned should not be too difficult. How did I ever act dumb? It was easy to follow the broken branches and large footprints pressed into the earth. The two giants were summoned to the north. As we moved, Constantine constantly reminded me to move in stealth using bushes and trees for cover. It caused me to move slower, and Flavius also slowed his pace so as not to get too far ahead. My training with Maveth significantly improved my ability to move stealthily. Constantine even noted my improvement with a grunt. The path was well marked as we moved further and further from the company. After about 5 miles, Flavius came back to us to confer. "The ritual summoning circle is just ahead. I do not think the summoner is still there, but there is a cave." Flavius had deferred to Constantine, who gave it some thought. "I will explore the cave. You two find cover and stay close." Flavius did not argue and moved off. The summoning circle was large, almost 50 feet across, and was charred into the flattened grass. It looked like the summoner had fed the hill giants after summoning them to contract them. The grass was stained red, with a deer head and giant elk antlers within the circle. The cave that Flavius found was just 50 yards away. I took cover behind a boulder. The woods were to my back, as well as a quiet stream. I figured a splash would alert me if something came at me from behind. Constantine moved along the rock face to the cave and waited for a long time, listening outside the cave before entering. After a few moments, the cave lit up from a glowstone. Constantine waved us over and we moved inside. The cave was only 20 feet in depth and fairly small. A fire pit was in the center, and Flavius dug in it with his hand. He sighed. "Been out at least half a day. We should head back and let the mages know." Constantine shook his head. "We will find the tracks and follow them. The summoner should be exhausted after summoning those two brutes. He is vulnerable, as I killed his 2 hounds. We can catch and take him out if we are fast enough." There was some tension in the air. Finally, Flavius caved. "I have a flare. I can signal Master Mage Sebastian." "A flare," Constantine said with amusement evident. I sensed something between them, and maybe it had to do with Sebastian. "Use it. We will continue tracking the summoner." We went to the clearing with the summoning circle, and Flavius fired off the flare. It was not gunpowder, but some other alchemical concoction. A tail of blue fire propelled it in the air, bursting into a bright green star without any sound. "Wait here for the drakes," Constantine said as he waved me to follow. When we got to the edge of the clearing, Constantine slowed. "Why are we leaving Flavius behind?" I asked, concerned. "We are not. We are searching for tracks leading away from here. We will circle wide and hopefully find something. Most elves have a fair amount of woodsman training, but we should come up with something." Constantine studied the ground as we moved. He paused near the stream. It was wide and had soft sandy soil along the edges. Even I could see the tracks, but that meant nothing, as they could have just been getting water here. Constantine studied the tracks for a long while before announcing, "They left through the stream. Either up or downstream. I don't know. Down is the hill giant's direction, so I am assuming upstream. You take that side, and I will take this side." "How are you so certain?" I asked, not seeing it in the mess of tracks. "There are 2 sets of fresh footprints here. The smaller one appeared to be the one getting water for the camp. The larger prints only occur once, leading to the water but never away from it." Constantine revealed. "I thought you said the summoner was alone?" A cold feeling washed over me. Were we walking into a trap? Maybe there were more elves out and about. It is a small woman. Maybe she was sleeping when I spotted him the first time. If she is also a summoner, then we need to be double quick about eliminating the threats." Constantine said firmly. A drake landed in the summoning circle. It was one of the legionnaires, not Sebastian. We headed over as Flavius was conversing with him. The rider gave us the update. The other drake survived the crash, but the legionnaire broke his neck. The Master Mage is healing the drake. I will be escorting it to the estate to get another rider. We should be back in 2 days. Master Mage Sebastian will be staying. I will inform the High Mage of your location." The drake rider mounted, preparing to take to the air. His face was impassive, but I could tell he did not like this business. Constantine informed him. "We are going to be following that stream." He indicated the wide, shallow water. The rider nodded stiffly and burst into the air. "I was buffeted by sand and dirt. I did not like the landing and takeoffs of these beasts." I spat out the crunchy sand mixed with my saliva and moved to the stream with Constantine. Constantine took the left bank and Flavius the right bank. I was the rear guard, ordered to stay 50 yards back and not make a lot of noise. The 2 experienced scouts weaved along the banks, looking for where our quarry might have exited the water. About 2 miles later, Constantine found the location. We crowded around him in an expanse of rocks. "What?" asked Flavius. Constantine pointed to a small puddle in the center of an exposed rock. "They must have wrung out their socks here. It has not rained in a few days, and the rock is exposed to the sun. It should have been completely dry." I was glad that Flavius looked as doubtful as me. We split some sticks to lay on our path so the company could follow us. Laying the fresh white wood face up made easy markers to indicate our direction. That ended up being my job. We spread out on the rocky ground and searched away from the river. A triumphant Constantine found a footprint a mile from the water. Heading off into the thick woodlands. They are heading west, Flavius noted. Deep into the wilds, Constantine grunted. They know we are out here. They must have heard the combat or seen the drakes. Look, he pointed. They sprint into the tree line. We have to push, or they will get too far ahead. We are maybe 6 hours behind them now. Constantine was already moving, and Flavius huffed in disagreement, but followed. I arranged a split stick and followed as well. As he went, Constantine was at a light jog, pointing out signs of passing. The elves were making mistakes now that they sensed we were getting closer. Flavius just nodded as he moved with him. Flavius grumbled that he was a good animal tracker, but tracking elves was a different game. I knew Constantine had been a hound, so maybe he gained his skills tracking humans there. We moved miles into the woods, and I had trouble keeping up because I had to split sticks and lay them as we went. Running and trying to split a stick with a knife was not advised, and I was glad I could heal myself. Constantine halted up ahead, and Flavius took cover. I crouched and approached them. Constantine nodded to me and pointed to bloodgrass, and I understood. The red sap from the root was dripping from a damaged leaf. I had harvested enough of the plants to know the sap only dripped for about 15 minutes before hardening sufficiently to seal the damage to the leaf. All three of us were still as we listened. I filtered out Flavius' breathing, and then my own heartbeat. My heart was racing more from adrenaline than fatigue. I didn't hear any birds, which meant they were also on alert. The mage summoner and his companion had to be close. Both Constantine and Flavius removed, strung their bows, and notched an arrow. Flavius went right, and Constantine left. That meant I was in the middle and was going to be the bait, something I was familiar with. At least I had my air shield. With my sword drawn, I moved forward, searching with my eyes and ears. I lost track of Flavius and Constantine as I moved. I paused once again, seeing dripping bloodgrass. There was a lot of it here. I started to think they intentionally left the trail to ambush us. No, Constantine would have thought of that. I kneeled by the dripping grass and moved the dead leaves, exposing the soil. It was definitely a male-sized footprint. I looked into the woods, scanning and listening. A flicker of movement in the trees to my right. It was Flavius about 60 yards away. I was about to take a step and paused. Something was tickling my mind, something I had seen or done. I looked up and scanned the trees. They wouldn't have been dumb enough to climb a tree. I split my vision from the ground to the trees. There, on a massive tree, its trunk over 6 feet in diameter, there was a thick branch about 20 feet off the ground. 2 figures lay prone on it, covered in brown cloaks. If only one had been, I would have overlooked it. But 2 brown lumps were very suspicious. A bow twang to my left made me know Constantine was fighting something more elves. Flavius' bow sounded as well. I looked up to see an enormous spider rapidly repelling toward me. I slashed and rolled away, using the rebound from my strike to gain distance. The crunch on my blade told me I had removed a leg, but a second spider was also coming for me. I created an air shield over my head to prevent the attack and backed away. I had a trio of dog-sized spiders on the ground, advancing in unison now. One walked awkwardly from the missing limb. The 2 brown lumps suddenly leaped off the branch to the ground, rolling as they landed. One of the spiders coiled, drawing my attention. As it leaped at me, I barely had time to establish my air shield. It crunched into the shield and fell to the ground, stunned. I lunged and stabbed its abdomen before retreating further and making sure I did not have any more visitors from above. "They are poisonous!" Flavius yelled a warning from my right. I grunted. Of course they were. My eyes darted from the spiders to the canopy to the 2 elves running away. Maybe they would have stopped to fight us if they knew we were only 3. Blue ooze leaked from the spider I had stabbed, and it was struggling to move, slowly dying. A second spider leaped, but I was ready with an air shield and hacked its carapace, cracking it and taking 2 legs with it. My last opponent was the injured spider, which could not do its leap attack with the missing limb. I pressed forward and stabbed it in the mandibles. One of its legs stabbed me through the thigh. I had not expected the quick attack, and the pain flared. I hacked the leg off and fell on my ass, cursing. I worked the spear-like spider leg out of my thigh, blood oozing with the removal. I applied my spell form to heal the injury and muscle while staying alert. I could hear Constantine fighting. But it was quiet from Flavia's direction. With my leg mostly healed, I ran to help Constantine. He was hacking into the last of his spiders, 4 in total. 2 had arrows in them, I declared. I saw the elf pair. They were wearing brown cloaks. They ran when the spiders attacked. Constantine nodded and kicked a spider. Summoned creatures? At least no variety of spiders I have seen before. He looked around. Are you okay? He indicated the blood on my pants. Is Flavius alive? Just a scratch. Used a salve I had purchased in the capital. I ignored his focus on my leg and looked back to where Flavius had been fighting. It was quiet on his side, so I came to help you first, I responded. Constantine nodded appreciatively and retrieved his bow. We both raced to check on Flavius. Flavius was leaning against a log and breathing heavily. A pair of spider fangs was lodged in his vambraces. I counted 4 dead spiders around him. I had received the lucky draw with just 3 spiders. Flavius looked up with glassy eyes. Some disorientation poison. I can't stand without falling over, Constantine asked. Can you hear me fine, or is it muffled? Muffled. Muffled, Flavius huffed. Most likely seasickness poison. Probably jungle canopy spiders. You should live. You will lose your hearing in a few minutes and may bleed out your ears. But you will live. And it is healable, Constantine informed the scout. Constantine stood and looked in the direction of the fleeing summoners. Okay, Eric, it is just me and you then. Let's go. He started after them, and I hesitated for a heartbeat before joining him. I followed Constantine as he moved quickly through the trees. I knew he was experienced at this, but he seemed too aggressive, too excited. Why not wait for the company to catch up? I am sure Zyna could handle the summoner by herself. There, he whispered harshly to me. About 200 yards ahead, the brown cloaks were moving steadily. We were gaining ground quickly, and I guessed a mage was just not as fit as a legionnaire. Constantine noted, expect them to make a stand when they realize they cannot outrun us. I nodded and focused on the pair. The shorter one was probably a woman and superior shape. Maybe she was not a mage then. She was definitely waiting for the taller one as she appeared she could outrun him if needed as we got closer. Both elves tossed their packs on the ground when they noticed us gaining on them. I hung back just a little, and as we reached the packs, I slowed for half a step and sent them into my dimensional space. Constantine was in front of me and did not see me take them. Constantine suddenly dropped to a knee and fired an arrow in a smooth motion. He missed the tall one by inches. He blamed his miss on the fletching. Harpy's tits, the fletching was loose, and resumed pursuit. Constantine was right about them making a stand. The cloaked figures leaped over a massive downed tree and stopped running. Constantine did not stop running. When we were just 50 feet from the log, the elf woman stood up and launched a fireball from her hands. Constantine swore, "Demon shit!" But there was nowhere to hide. I jumped prone and placed an air shield in front of me. Constantine was 4 strides in front of me, trying to get out of the path of the flaming sphere by diving right. The fireball crashed where he had been standing a second ago and exploded. Constantine was thrown into the air by the blast. The fire, heat, flaming levers, and blasted earth washed over me, briefly making my location an oven. My lungs hurt from breathing in the hot, dry air, but other than that, I escaped unharmed as the pins of small stones stopped echoing on my armor. Constantine was not as lucky. He was rolling on the ground 30 feet away in some pain, and dazed, while trying to put out flames on his exposed clothes. He had also lost his helm, and his salt and pepper hair whirled about as he rolled. A blue bolt of light shot from the cloaked woman and struck my air shield, causing it to become visible briefly. I recognized the type of bolt from the dungeon. Castile had used a wand that cast arcane missiles like this. I added another shield as mine was about to expire. She launched 2 more missiles and they splashed uselessly against the first air shield but shattered it. The mage stopped firing the arcane bolts, and I sprinted for Constantine, ready with another air shield if needed. She fired another missile, and I thought there was no way it would hit me. The fucking arcane arrow changed directions, and my armor got a blackened scorch mark on the back as it thudded into me and caused me a brief stumble. Constantine's face was burned and blistered, again first a hellhound, and now a fireball. His face was an angry red, blistering, and his facial hair, which had just started growing, was gone again. He had protected his eyes, at least. I dragged him behind a tree for cover, taking 2 more arcane arrow strikes. One burned my armor, and the other connected with my arm, burning deeply into my bicep. The smell of my cooked flesh hit my senses, and my mouth reflexively salivated. What a fucking Pavlovian response to have in battle. I didn't dwell on the wrongness of it, and focused on the pain, and I got both of us to cover. Constantine had signs of a concussion. He was unable to focus his eyes and was speaking nonsense. I didn't have anything that would help him. I healed my own injury, and realized I didn't have much either left. I did have enough to use my dimensional space to kill one of the mages if I could get close enough. But that meant I wouldn't be able to use my air shield again. Dropped my bow. Constantine sounded irritated and angry, but at least he was now coherent. Doesn't matter. The string was burned up in the heat, I said, peeking around the tree and studying the enemies. I decided to whine a little. Why the fuck did you think it was a good idea for the 2 of us to go after 2 mages? Constantine croaked out. Thought he had to be out of ether after summoning the giants and spiders. He groaned as he moved to look around the tree as well. If we wait long enough, the company should reach us in a few hours. Do you have any water? It was the closest I would ever get to Constantine begging me for something. I realized he had probably inhaled a lot of hot air and produced a canteen from my dimensional space for him. He drank the entire canteen of cold water and tossed it away. I can still move. I can distract them while you circle that way. He indicated the upturned roots of the tree they were using for cover. They possess a wand that shoots arcane arrows, just like the ones Castile used to have, Constantine. You wouldn't stand a chance. I pointed out the scorch marks on my armor to reinforce my point. Constantine studied the burns and nodded, thinking. Constantine was not a person that was good with waiting. I checked for the 5th time around the trunk. One of them is running, Constantine. He twisted his body and craned his neck to see. It is the taller one, the male summoner. We cannot let him get away, Constantine growled. He is slower, so the woman is covering his retreat, he grunted, getting to his feet in obvious pain. I will draw her attention. Get to her as quickly as possible. I don't think I can run. Wrenched my knee on landing. He did not say more as he hobbled to the right at a light jog. We could have just waited for reinforcements, but Constantine needed to have his win. How had the man survived for so long? He meant to bend over for his helmet as he moved, but his leg gave out on him, and he stumbled to the ground. An azure missile burned into his armor. Fuck it, I thought. I ran to the right, using the distraction he was giving me. The cloaked elf fired a blue bolt at me. I managed to get behind the roots, and it slammed harmlessly into them. I was now at the base of the downed tree she was behind. I moved around the corner to peek. The elf woman was sprinting away. I looked back at Constantine, who was hobbling, but he had his helmet on. The small elf was running to catch up with the summoner, and I thought it would be stupid to chase her as the other one could have set up another ambush. Get her! I will be right behind you, Constantine yelled at me. I started running and mumbling to myself. Don't let them get away, Eric. Gather herbs in my place, Eric. Time to practice your fighting, Eric. Eric, you are the decoy for the scary monsters. Go with a prick mage and fight a storm giant. Chase after the fleeing mages by yourself, Eric. The shorter elf was not slow, but my longer stride had me covering the ground quickly. I wanted to catch her before she reunited with the summoner. She moved from the thick-trunked forest into a sparser wooded area with evergreens. The scent of pine needles assaulted me as I sprinted and closed the distance. My adrenaline-fueled sprint was going to overtake her. We hit a descent into a small ravine, and I used gravity to close quickly with her. Before she reached the bottom, I was swinging my blade into her back. Deja vu occurred as the elf spun and parried my attack with a dagger. Her momentum took her into a roll as she crashed into the bottom of the ravine and skidded across the dried pine needles on her knees facing me. I surfed the pine needles to a stop 10 feet away. The elf's hood had come down as she stood to face me with a long dagger in one hand and a short parrying dagger in the other. She looked familiar as her chest heaved for oxygen, but that was impossible. I left that elf burnt and dying at the aqueduct. Her face showed surprise as her eyes got bigger and bigger. Nope. It was definitely her as she recognized me too. In Elvish, she said something to the effect, Don't you taint me again with your evil magic, Legionnaire, although that may be a cleaner version of it. I sought for the elvish words I had been learning from the scholar. Surrender. I will kill Yunat. Her eyes narrowed and got hard, and in accented Telhian she said, Your elvish is terrible. I will not surrender. She did not attack, and seemed more ready to run again than fight. Then again, the last time we met, I had stored her in my dimensional space for 2 days. Thankful to be speaking Tellian, I said emotionlessly. Yeah, I only started learning your language a week ago. But you do either need to surrender, or I will have to kill you. I was already planning to rush her if she started to form a fireball. I needed to keep my ether for the summoner, so I would have to kill her quickly. Our standoff ended when a drake crashed through the pine canopy, showering us in both pine needles and broken branches. The confusion allowed Sebastian's drake to crash into the elf girl, seizing her in his jaw, crunching her body, as her bones audibly popped. It flung her into a rock. Her body crumbled, full of oozing puncture wounds. Still mounted on his drake? Sebastian asked. Was that the summoner? A little shocked, I answered. No, Master Mage. She was just a guardian, I think. The summoner is close, just a few minutes ahead of me in that direction, I pointed. He looked down at the elf, sneered in contempt, and took off into the sky, showering me again in more pine needles. I moved to the elf girl and was about to pull out the collector, but thought better of it. Sebastian and Constantine were too close. The young elf's body was broken and bleeding. Her skull was probably fractured, and her torso was crushed, a few bones showing visible. Her chest was not rising or falling. She must be dead. I could store her and get her essence later when I was sure Durandus was not around. Greed overcame my judgment. I listened and didn't hear anything, so I moved the elf into my storage. She must have been only mostly dead because my aether bottomed out with the backlash. Crap! Without aether this was going to be a problem. Constantine was up on the ridge while I was trying to decide what to do, Eric. I saw Sebastian as Drake. Is he here? I pointed. He went after the summoner. Constantine nodded, did not descend into the ravine, and hobbled in the direction I indicated. That man was too tough for his own good. I took a deep breath and picked up the elf's 2 daggers, the smaller of which appeared to have runic writing. The long dagger was also shiny steel, but did not have any markings other than the smith's mark. I looked at the scene. If Sebastian returned, he would probably wonder where the body went. There was nothing I could do about it now with no ether. I moved down to the end of the ravine and climbed out to join Constantine. It did not take me long to catch him, and I could see the drake in the skies circling and searching ahead of us. Constantine's voice was labored. Is the elf woman dead? The drake crushed her body and tossed it into a boulder. I collected her weapons, I replied, indicating the 2 short blades in my belt. He nodded, looking pleased. One opponent was handled. The thick evergreens thinned to grassy hills dotted with large trees. We could now easily see the drake about a mile away circling one tree. Constantine grinned and sounded elated. Looks like Sebastian has treated our prey. Let's get closer, but let the mage do his work. We slowed to a walk and watched the drake circle a 200-foot pear-shaped tree. When we got within 100 yards, we took cover behind another tree, Constantine pulling me aside. Best to remain here in case Sebastian decides to burn down the tree. Sebastian circled the tree, tormenting the summoner, taking cover under it. Constantine suddenly pulled me back hard, pointing into the distance. Don't move and hide yourself from that. A creature was still far away, but was already bigger than the drake that Sebastian was riding. Is that a dragon? I asked numbly and in awe while pressing myself down. Could be a juvenile dragon, but I think it is a wyvern, Constantine said emotionlessly. Sebastian finally noticed the massive beast and realized he had turned from predator to prey. The wyvern made the drake look small in comparison as they positioned themselves with the blue backdrop. Sebastian turned hard and low as he flew his drake among the scattered trees. The wyvern did not pursue but instead landed at the base of the tree where the summoner was. Constantine and I huddled under the lower branches for cover, with a narrow window on the scene in the distance. The summoner emerged from the tree and stood before the wyvern that towered over him. Its serpentine neck got within feet of the brave summoner. Just the head of the red burnt-colored wyvern was larger than the summoner. I would guess that beast has a 50-foot wingspan, Constantine said studiously. Dragons can get much larger. Maybe we will get lucky, and the wyvern will eat the elf and leave my sword, he added with some hope. I was hoping he would eat the master mage myself, so I wouldn't have to worry about his pursuit of his brother's collector. The summoner seemed to converse with the beast before it bolted back into the air after Sebastian and his drake mount. The buffeting wind knocked the summoner to the ground. When the wyvern disappeared over a hill, I asked, "What should we do? If we go after the summoner and the wyvern returns, we will be caught in the open." Constantine considered and grumbled. If I had my bow, I could easily hit him from here. I had multiple bows in my dimensional space, but taking one out would reveal to Constantine the extended size of my space. I did have spare bowstrings in my space that I had forgotten about. The strings were small, and I had recovered enough aether to take them out. I moved the bundle of bowstrings to my hand and was about to hand it to Constantine when a shriek echoed beyond the hills. Sebastian and his drake came speeding over the hill and targeted the elf. He barely got back under cover of the tree as the drake turned away and rose into the sky. Only seeing the drake, I asked in disbelief, "Did Sebastian defeat the wyvern?" My question was answered when the dragonkin appeared again in pursuit of Sebastian. It was clear to see that the drake was faster and more agile than the wyvern. They both took to the skies in a display of aerial acrobatics. I had to admire Master Mage's riding skills. He would let the wyvern get near but prevent it from getting too close. The drake even puffed a thin stream of fire at the wyvern, scorching its head slightly on one clash. This only enraged the beast to pursue the fire drake with more intensity. I placed the bowstrings in my pocket. If I gave them to Constantine, then he might decide to take a shot at the wyvern, and the last thing I wanted was the attention of a 50-foot-long dragonkin. "Why doesn't the wyvern just breathe fire in retaliation?" I asked. Constantine had an answer. "Wyverns cannot breathe fire. Only dragons and certain drakes. We watch the show through the thin canopy of fall leaves." After 10 minutes, Constantine said, "I think he is trying to wear it out. I am guessing, but its much larger body would tire more quickly." Minutes passed. Why has he not led it away from here, or toward the company and Mage Zyna? I am guessing High Mage Zyna can kill it easily enough, I asked while pressing to the ground. Constantine had been worried the summoner might see us, so we had both been lying prone and still for the last few minutes. "I can't tell you the mind of the Master Mage, Eric," Constantine said, watching the aerial dance. "But it looks like he is. That stupid bastard. I think he is trying to dominate its mind." I rolled over to my back to look at the sky instead of craning my neck. The mage would position himself behind the wyvern and then pass close by, but he was not taunting the beast like I had thought earlier. It did look like he was trying to cast a spell, or use a spell form. Maybe Constantine was right, and he was using mind magic on the creature. Will he succeed? How much longer until the company gets here? I asked, watching the mage play cat and mouse with the massive dragon-like creature. Constantine watched the sky and surmised it would be quite the prize for him, and he wouldn't have to give the essence to Zyna. By keeping the battle over the tree, the summoner cannot escape either. Very tactical of Sebastian. I decided the moment was right to hand Constantine the bowstrings. He looked at them, incredulous. "You had these the whole time?" I brushed it off. I just remembered I had them. "They were in my dimensional space." "Where did you get these?" he asked, pleasantly surprised as he immediately made to string his bow. "Been carrying them around for a while," I said non-committedly. "Just don't go shoot at the wyvern and draw attention to us." "I wouldn't do anything so foolish." "Do you have any arrows?" "Most of my fletchings are burnt," he said anxiously. "No, just the strings. Arrows do not fit in my dimensional space," I said as he inspected his 9 remaining arrows, pulling the 3 best out. Constantine started talking to himself. 120 paces. The wind is light from the left. He notched his bow and studied the summoner under the tree, who was also watching the aerial combat. The summoner did not seem to know what to do with himself. He couldn't flee, or Sebastian could make another attack against him. The summoner walked 2 steps to the right to get a better view, and Constantine launched his arrow. He missed high as the arrow whizzed over the summoner's head by inches. Constantine already had a second arrow notched, and evaluating how he missed, he launched the second. The summoner had only turned at the sound of the arrow. The second arrow struck into his arm, pinning it to his side. Constantine had launched the third arrow, but the summoner had already fallen to the ground and scurried behind his tree trunk. Fortuna's cursed luck. If he had not turned, that arrow would have pierced his heart. I studied the sky to see if Constantine's attack had drawn the combatants' attention. It looked like they had missed the few seconds of action and were still in their dance. The summoner was slumped against the far side of the tree. "I bet he has a healing potion," I said. "He still would need to pull out that arrow first, and he has no leverage to do so." Constantine was searching for his remaining arrows, but the fireball had damaged them all. "Look," I nudged Constantine's focus skyward. The wyvern was diving down and landed heavily a quarter-mile away, while on the other side of the tree, the summoner was hiding behind. "We should run," I agree, and Constantine gained his feet and ran to the summoner. I was going to say we should run back to get the company. Instead, I had to follow Constantine in what amounted to a suicide charge if the wyvern spotted us. I thought seriously about not joining him, but my feet took me after him for some reason. It did not take much effort to catch up to him. As I passed him, I said, "If this gets me killed, I will haunt you till the end of time." I reached the summoner first, and he was struggling to remove the arrow. He jolted in surprise, and pain laced his face at my appearance. I did not hesitate to press the point of my blade into his collarbone and down into his chest. He weakly grabbed at the sword, trying to stop it as blood oozed out of his mouth because I had pierced the lung. He dropped a potion in his other hand. He was dead before Constantine reached us. He was breathing heavily, and I took the potion on the ground. I think he was going to drink this once he got the arrow out. Constantine smiled as he broke the seal and drank the potion. The effect was immediate as his burned skin healed, flaking away, and his knee gave an audible pop. While he was healing, I turned my sights to the wyvern. The wyvern was on the ground, and Sebastian was still circling 50 yards overhead. The wyvern watched the drake almost hypnotically and did not look in our direction. Sebastian landed far away, and I could tell his own drake was exhausted. The wyvern appeared to be breathing heavily from the aerial pursuit. Had the master mage tamed the beast's mind? It seemed to be a standoff, the mage assessing whether he had achieved success and the wyvern staring him down, waiting. Sebastian dismounted and started to walk cautiously toward the wyvern. Shit! He had really done it then. I could see him weaving spell forms between his hands as he approached, probably reinforcing whatever control he had. The wyvern studied him as he stopped about 20 yards away. It lowered its head in a show of submissiveness. Constantine seemed to notice what was going on for the first time. He had busy freeing the blade on the summoner's hip Constantine's missing runic weapon. I certainly hoped all his tenacity in the chase was not so that he could reclaim his weapon, but by the euphoric look in his eyes, I guessed that might be the reason, he gruffly said. "Looks like the mage did it. His standing in the Empire will rise if he commands that creature." Sebastian stopped approaching the wyvern, and I could see the confusion on his face even at 200 yards away. He stepped back as the wyvern raised its head and smiled. Sebastian whistled for his mount and turned to run, but he was too far away now from the drake. The wyvern bounded 2 steps, shaking the earth and swallowing him whole. Blue arcs of defensive magic flared in its mouth, but that did not matter in the beast's powerful jaws. Constantine elbowed me as I was gawking. Time to go. I was sickly enthralled with the crunching of bone. The drake charged the greater beast and was quickly slammed to the ground, trapped under its claw. It snapped at the wyvern's leg, but it was helpless. "Eric!" Constantine hissed, already 20 yards away. He was no longer crippled and moving with his usual speed. I took a step back, and the wyvern turned its head. The eyes told me this creature was not some mindless beast even at this distance. I turned to run and catch up with Constantine. I heard the shriek of the drake before its life was snuffed out, and then a terrible crash. I looked behind me to find the tree that the summoner's body was under had been knocked over, and the wyvern was studying the body. I had not even extracted my blade. "Run faster!" I heard Constantine yell from in front of me. We were a quarter-mile from the dense evergreen forest. I was running at my best speed, but visions of the wyvern came down and inhaled me in one bite played in my mind. Was it odd that both brothers had died to their own overconfident hubris? Somehow, Constantine was faster than me, and I couldn't blame him for not waiting for me. Did I have enough either to move the creature's head into my dimensional space? Maybe, but it was crowded in there. Maybe a cubic yard of space. What body part, then? The heart? No, I would be dead before it mattered. It had to be the brain before it swallowed me. That was the only out. I looked behind me, and the dragonkin was taking flight and coming after me. I did not doubt that. I told myself not to look and just run faster. The false safety of the pine forest was just steps away. The pine trees were suddenly in a gale of wind in front of me as the wyvern landed, crashing into some branches and shaking the ground as it cut off my escape. The ground had lurched from the landing of the multi-ton beast, helping me stop. My heart beat so loud in my mind, I couldn't hear anything. The scene in front of me seemed too surreal. An arrow shattered on the back of the beast's head. "Constantine, run! Don't worry about me!" I yelled at him even though I could not see him. A second arrow shattered, and the wyvern didn't even turn around. It just studied me like a mouse. At least the creature had not just crushed me from above. "You prefer to play with your food. Well, bring it on," I said with bravado. No more arrows came, and I hoped Constantine was running. I did not want him to see this. I just needed the wyvern to get a little closer. A voice echoed in my mind. "You killed Veril, my apprentice." Intuitively, I understood that it was not the wyvern but someone talking through the wyvern. My heart thudded. "Traeliorn?" I asked, gulping. Shit, if he was inside or controlling the wyvern, would it count as joined etheric resistance? Would I be able even to use spatial power on the creature's brain? The voice echoed again, angrier. "Did you kill my apprentice?" The large black eyes of the wyvern had a depth to them as they studied me. How should I answer the powerful summoner behind the impossibly formidable creature? Yes, my answer was dry and factual. Even if I said no, he would not let me go. A large scaled claw stepped forward, bringing the head closer on its craning neck. The voice echoed again. "Then, Legionnaire, know that it was I who sent you to your afterlife for your crime. Traeliorn Kelleran, Veril's teacher and friend." The wyvern roared unnecessarily and lunged with its powerful legs and extended its neck at me to close on me. I focused on the skull's interior and moved a large piece to my dimensional storage. It was a strong tug of war with the creature's resistance. I immediately knew it was just the creature, not the mage. The struggle hung in time, but I succeeded in claiming the brain. Unfortunately, the momentum of the wyvern's lunge slammed into my body. I heard my bones crack, and I was sent flying with a tumult of earth and stone as the beast collapsed into the soft earth. My only fortune was I had not been trapped under the body when it struck me. My aether was bottomed out, and I had no potions on my person. I was also in severe shock as I realized my hand didn't work and my wrist was at the wrong angle. As the pain started to ebb back into my consciousness, my only thought was I had killed a dragonwell, something that looked like a dragon. I laughed aloud, but the act enhanced the pain throughout my body and caused me to black out. I was cold. My body felt like I was left out in the snow naked. I was in the barn that I had arrived in this world. I was naked, and the air was freezing. My skin was goosebumped, and I felt like I was frozen solid, unable to move. I tried to force myself to move, and pain erupted through my whole body. The barn door rattled, and my eyes focused on the light bleeding through the corners. The door suddenly burst into 1,000 pieces, and a massive wyvern was perched at the entrance. My eyes shot open, and I stared at the sky. My body felt hot and cold at the same time, and I felt weaker than a mouse. I tried to move, but that was not going to work. The pain was real, but hidden behind a curtain of shock. I checked on my ether. I had been unconscious for about an hour based on my ether core recovery. I used my self-healing spell form to explore my injuries. My heart was still pumping, and I was not bleeding anywhere on the outside. My chest cavity had blood from a lacerated spleen and liver, the most serious injuries. At least, I assumed that organ was my spleen. I healed that first. I then used as little ether as I could to work over my other damaged organs. I left the broken bones alone for now, as living through this was more important. I had essentially been hit by a buzznot, a speeding bus. If I had not woken up, I would have died. A massive breeze of foul air washed over me. I craned my neck up a little. The wyvern was 20 feet away and still breathing, its chest rising shallowly and falling. Panic and fear welled up, but as my vision focused, its eyes were wide, bloody orbs, and a steady pool of blood was coming out its nostrils. The wyvern's brain had forgotten to tell the body it was dead. Well, that part of that brain must be in my dimensional space. I relaxed on the ground. This was actually good news. Maybe if it was still breathing, I could harvest its essence later. I still had the essence given to me by Zyna from the hill giant. I reached into my space, brought it into my hand, and immediately dropped it. That wrist was broken and was a swollen mass of blood. I focused on aligning the bones and repairing the damage. While I was at it, I healed some cracked ribs that had been making breathing difficult. Not that I noticed. I did not finish before I ran out of aether, but I could fish in the grass and collect the essence sphere. I had been planning to save this major essence of constitution for Ginger, but I needed it more right now. I placed it in my mouth and savored the tingly feeling spreading throughout my body. It was not going to heal me, but it should minimally help increase my body's ability to heal. I relaxed into the grass, no longer worried I was going to die. Where was Constantine? How much did he see? He had shot those arrows from quite a distance. It made me feel good that he had not abandoned me until the last possible moment. Once he saw the wyvern lunge at me, he probably assumed I was dead. I waited for my ether to recover with my eyes closed, trying not to fall asleep. The breaths of the wyvern got further and further apart. When I did not hear an exhalation followed by the foul air of its breath, I moved to get up. Sitting up was not pleasant as I had a lot of healing yet to complete. Standing was not in the cards at the moment as I crawled to the creature's head. I had enough aether to remove the collector and use it. The head of the wyvern was larger than a horse, and memories of Sebastian being consumed and chewed like a piece of gum had me hesitate in approaching. Air exhaled from the lungs again, very slowly, but the blood dripping from the nostrils had coagulated and was no longer flowing. Leaning against the head, I placed the collector on top like a memorial death crown. I channeled aether into it and stepped back as the azure mist swirled from the body. The massive creature shivered like it was resisting its life force being taken from it. I watched as the collected wobbled slightly, the beast shuddering in its fight against the collector. More essence was drawn than normal, maybe, because it was still alive. An apex essence formed and rolled onto the ground. The beast's abdominal cavity slowly collapsed as it loosed its final breath. It had been holding on to life like any creature would. Now, it was dead. I picked up the unfamiliar sphere azure blue with white swirls. A two-tone meant it was most likely an essence for a magic affinity. I used the head to help me stand and leaned against the creature while I rested. If Constantine or the company found me right now, I would look pretty badass. Of course, walking was going to be a chore. As aether became available, I started working on my hip joint. The socket where my femur sat in my pelvis was a mess. Thankfully, I did not need to be a doctor to figure things out. I just needed to know where the issue was and direct the healing spell form at it. I took a tentative step, then another. I healed some ligaments in my knee to eliminate a limp. I collected my helm nearly 100 feet away, then went to the dead summoner's apprentice. It had been almost 2 hours since I had killed him. I tried the collector anyway, and it did not trigger. Extracting my blade from the body took a little work, and I cleaned it in the grass. I searched his person for another healing potion, and found 3 different potions secured on his belt. All were labeled in Elvish, so I was curious to know if they were healing potions. I sent the potions, the collector, the 2 blades from the elf woman, and the apex essence into my dimensional space. I pulled out a canteen and filled it with rum from my space. I sat down next to the dead summoner and drank. It had a mellow sweetness, but I was drinking it more for the alcohol to get the numbness of being drunk. After a few swigs, I offered the summoner some, but he was uninterested. I was waiting for Castile and the others to find me. I switched to water, not wanting to get completely drunk in case I needed my faculties. I healed injuries but kept enough either available in case Traelian sent another creature after me. I removed the Baron Sun's sleeping roll at sunset from my space. I weaved my way into the branches of the tree the wyvern had knocked over and set up a place to sleep. I figured any creature trying to get to me would have to break the branches and wake me. The alcohol made falling asleep easy enough after an extremely stressful day. I woke once during the night to an owl that was curiously sitting on a branch, hooting at me. I tossed a stick at it, and it flew away to leave me in peace. I was up with the morning sun and continued my healing until I could move without pain. Zyna must have decided a fight with the wyvern was too difficult without the drakes, as they had yet to arrive. Constantine would have told her that Sebastian and I were made into wyvern snacks. I started to backtrack from the direction we had chased the elves. I searched the ravine to see if the company had come and searched it. There were no footprints other than mine and the drakes. The company had not come looking for me. They must have assumed I was dead. I climbed out of the ravine, found a broad stream, and cleaned myself. I had been bathed in earth and stone when the wyvern came up short of ending my life. I remained on alert as Constantine had taught me as I contemplated. I might be able to sneak away. If everyone thought I was dead, then it shouldn't be too hard to ditch my legionnaire armor and make my way. Where would I go? East was the Barteradians. North and west were the orcs. South there was a massive and dangerous mountain range. But on the other side of that range were the older kingdoms of Dizia. A deep voice intoned from behind a rock. "Eric, is that really you?" I almost jumped in surprise, but didn't. I just pretended that I had heard the Goliath sneak up on me. "You know, Mavith, you shouldn't disturb someone when they are bathing." "I thought you were a goblin coming to steal my boots." I looked up at the Goliath on the rocks 20 yards away. He narrowed his eyes. "You did not hear me, and I would not sound like a skulking goblin if you did hear me." I shrugged at his annoyance at being compared to a goblin. "So, where is everyone?" I asked conversationally. Mavith walked cautiously down to the water but stood a dozen paces away. He sat on a stone and studied me. "Constantine told everyone that a wyvern ate Master Mage Sebastian and you as well." Zyna was not prepared to fight a wyvern the size Constantine described, especially without support in the air. "So, are they camped nearby then?" I inquired while putting on my damp clothes. "They headed back to Sobril. Constantine said you killed the summoner we were pursuing." He finally seemed to believe I was not a ghost, and he relaxed and sat on a boulder. "Why are you here then?" I asked. Mavith's brow furrowed. "I was going to see if there was anything left of you and return it to the earth. Matteo said you were too lucky to get killed by a dragon look-alike. He said bringing you down would have taken a real dragon. Benito even started a betting pool that you would walk out of the woods smelling like you had just taken a bath." He looked me over. I guess he was right. I just laughed again. "How far behind the company are we?" I asked as I finished dressing and feeling much better without dirt in every crevice of my body. Mavith stood as well. "They left this morning, so they are maybe half a day ahead now. But Zyna had them moving at a fast pace. I marched with them until they took a break and wandered off into the woods after telling Flavius where I was going. He said he would give an excuse for my absence. I hoped to bury your remains and reach them during the night." "Well, thank you, I guess. We should get moving then." I stood and started walking, and Mavith fell in beside me. There was a silence for a long time before his curiosity overwhelmed him. "What happened?" I had been waiting for the question. "You remember the female manticore? You poisoned the wyvern," Mavith said in disbelief. "Yes, I did the same thing to the wyvern that I did to the manticore," I said truthfully. Mavith was surprised, but seemed to believe me. After a time I asked, "Mavith, when you left Stone Mountain Island, you must have been to a lot of places in your travels. Tell me about them. Why did you finally choose to live in the woods north of Sobril?" Mavith did not want to be reminded of the reason he fled his people, but he eventually answered. The truth was, this was as far away as I could get, and living alone in the woods seemed like a suitable punishment. I spent most of my time on ships getting here, but did explore some of the more interesting port cities. I listened to Mavith talk enthusiastically about the cities he visited as we walked to sunset. We camped together in a small, shallow cave. I felt relatively well rested, so I took the first watch. Neptune's tear blue light illuminated the woods below. Tomorrow, we would catch up with the company if we push. How was I going to explain my miraculous survival to them? In the morning, we made our way to catch up to the company. I was having some trepidation about answering questions about my miraculous survival. No one had seen the dead wyvern, And I probably should not have told Mavith I had poisoned the beast, as he had trouble with the idea of lying. I also should not have healed all my injuries. Maybe if I returned, like I had been put through a meat grinder, they would have thought my escape was more probable. I paused to check the ground and read the passing of the company. Mavith, these prints are dry near the stream. I don't think we are going to catch them today. They are going to beat us back to Sobril. Do you want to detour to your cabin? Mavith contemplated before answering. We can make the citadel by dark. I think perhaps we should do that. Your company will want to know you are alive as soon as possible. I thought I would be fine with Castile and the others in the company, but I was slightly worried about High Mage Zyna's reaction to seeing me alive after facing a wyvern. She was obviously much more important and had more sway as a first citizen. I didn't argue with Mavith, and we slightly increased our pace to make the citadel by dark. In the end, we arrived a few hours after dark. The gate guards let us through after conferring with their captain. I assumed word of my return would reach Tasvia, the Duchess's gate captain. I went to the northwest tower to sleep in the bed there. The 4 beds we'd had hauled up here were still there, and Flavius and Constantine occupied 2. Only a dim glowstone lit the room. I backed out into the stairway and stopped Mavith from coming up the stairs. I whispered, Mavith, I want to play a little joke on Constantine. Can you help? Mavith did not look like he wanted to play along, so I added, just pretend you cannot see or hear me. I want Constantine to think I am haunting him from beyond. Mavith processed what I said. Like an apparition, I nodded and motioned him to be quieter as his deep voice echoed around the stone stairs. I had Mavith go in first, and both Flavius and Constantine stirred to see the Goliath before getting up. Constantine mumbled. Did you find anything left, Mavith? I moved into the archway of the stairs and just stood there. Mavith was quiet, trying to decide what to say. He rumbled, I did not find a dead body. Constantine rolled over to look at Mavith. The wyvern ate him. I told you would find nothing. I wanted to jump up and down and draw Constantine's attention to me, but remained quiet, Flavius said in a low tone. Your loyalty and bravery in looking for your friend is admirable, Goliath. Get some rest. The pain of loss will be temporary. That was surprisingly nice for Flavius to say. Maybe the news of Sebastian's death had loosened him up a little. I scuffed my feet and nearly broke into a grin as Constantine rolled over to look in the archway. His eyes slowly widened in surprise and fear. He rolled off the bed and was drawing his runic blade. Revenant, he yelled. Flavius turned and reached for his own weapon. Mavith, arm yourself, Flavius yelled as the stationary Goliath. Mavith turned slowly to face the door. What? I don't see anything unusual. The grin on his face told me he was enjoying this. On the other hand, I was doubting my joke was going over as well as I had hoped. Both experienced legionnaires looked ready to kill me. Flavius was already notching an arrow. I put up my hands. Don't kill me. I have had a really bad few days. Mavith, did you bring back an animated corpse? Constantine rasped angrily at the Goliath. What? I don't see a corpse. Is something wrong? Mavith said mechanically, still enjoying the game and pretending I was not here. The joke is over, Mavith, I said nervously. They might actually kill me if they think I am some undead creature. Mavith nodded in agreement, ending the joke. I didn't find a dead Eric. I found a live Eric, Mavith said triumphantly, pointing at me. Constantine looked incredulous at Mavith. Impossible. Eric or whatever you are, move to that wall. He pointed with his sword. Flavius, go get Castile, he ordered. After I moved out of the stairway, Flavius rushed off to get Castile. I was seeing the downside of my joke going awry. After Flavius left, Constantine did not relax. Instead, he moved to the stairs. What happened then? I saw the wyvern lunge at you. You were as good as dead. This was a lot harder than I thought it would be in my mind. Alright, the elven high mage Traelian was controlling the wyvern. That was how he fooled Master Mage Sebastian into thinking he had control of the wyvern. He talked to me through the creature. Constantine's eyes narrowed some. And how are you alive? Did you bargain with him? Well, At least Constantine was not calling me a Liara traitor, you liar. No. I leaned against the wall to appear relaxed. Why don't we wait till Castile gets here so I don't have to explain things twice? That would also make sure I didn't actually change my story. Constantine just turned to Mavaeth and said, "Where'd you find him?" Mavaeth answered, "I was following the trail to the Wyvern, and I found him bathing in a shallow stream on the way. He said I sounded like a goblin when I snuck up on him." Mavaeth shook his head, still upset that I said he sounded like a goblin. Constantine rubbed his forehead like he was getting a headache. He still had his runic sword in his hand, ready to defend himself. During his time in the Hounds, I knew he hunted various creatures that could change shape. So I was not too surprised he was skeptical I was me. He studied me. "If it is you, Eric, I am glad you are alive, but things are not good." Master Mage Sebastian was a very important mage in the Empire, a favorite of the Emperor. His death is going to have consequences. Castile arrived in a nightshirt with her boots on a moment later. She was breathing heavily like she had run here. Her eyes went wide. "Dragon shit. It's true. Don't get excited. I am still not sure it is actually our lost legionnaire. He might be an undead or a shapeshifter," Constantine said doubtfully. His voice was laced with skepticism as he added, "He has not told me how he survived." Castile looked me up and down. "Well, I am sure it will be an interesting story. Let me confirm he is not an undead." Constantine's grip tightened on his sword as Castile closed her eyes. Flavius was in the archway for the stairs, and was also ready to respond. When Castile opened her eyes, she spoke, "Not an undead, and his ether core is familiar. I think it is Legionnaire Eric. Now, Eric, please explain." Her eyes danced in happiness, or maybe amusement. I couldn't tell. Constantine relaxed visibly, which I was glad about. The summoner was controlling the Wyvern, not the apprentice summoner we were chasing, but Traelion Kelleran. Castile's eyes rose skeptically. I added, "The mage talked to me through the Wyvern." Castile settled into a chair, falling heavily and going into thought. It would make sense. We learned the Wyvern was attacking a village far to the north. It suddenly stopped and flew hard south. The apprentice must have communicated with Traelion and asked for help. Castile was thinking hard. She finally looked up. "What happened to the Wyvern then?" "It is dead." I knew they would want more than that. "I poisoned it when it got close. It was so close I could touch it. I placed poison in its mouth, and it didn't even realize it." I looked at Constantine, Flavius, and then Mavaeth to my left. Castile knew I could heal, but they did not. I was mortally wounded as it crushed me in its death throes. I thought about lying and saying I had healing potions, but that would lead to more questions. I was barely able to heal myself. It took me over half a day since I have so little ether. Castile nodded slowly. Constantine was exasperated. "You have a healing spell form?" I was surprised Constantine was more angry about not knowing I had a spell form than the fact I just said I used poison. Castile gave him a sharp look. "He can only heal himself." A look of realization came across his face as he pieced things together from the past. He whispered to himself. "The aqueduct, the run to the capital." Castile focused on me, asking hopefully, "Did you get Sebastian's collector?" "Did I what?" I asked, perplexed. Then I remembered that Sebastian had a collector. I had not thought about searching inside the Wyvern for Sebastian's body. No, I did not. It was not on his body when the Wyvern ate him. It must have been on his drake. The Wyvern killed the drake, too. It might still be there. Constantine sheathed his blade, realizing how foolish he looked holding a sword at me. "I can get there and back in 3 days," he volunteered, his eyes still on me. I knew he also wanted to verify my story. Castile considered Constantine's offer, and Flavius extended his services, saying, "I can go with him." Great. There were 2 of them that wanted to verify my story. "Yes. Recover Sebastian's body for the Emperor. Get the collector if you find it. I will send a message to High Mage Zyna that the Wyvern has been killed, and we are attempting to recover Sebastian's body," Castile said, still thinking. "The High Mage is not in Sobral," I questioned. I probably had too much relief in my voice and tightened up. "No, High Mage Zyna rode hard to a portal to get back to the capital. She needs to explain and account for Master Mage Sebastian's death," Constantine interjected. Will Octavian cause you trouble again? I asked, concerned. Mage Zyna was in charge of the hunting party. The fault is with her. If they choose to investigate and call a tribunal, you and Constantine may have to go before the truth seekers. Even from the grave, Sebastian was still causing me anxiety. I nodded to Castile. Constantine started packing for his expedition. Flavius joined him. What do you need me to do? I asked, still feeling under the microscope. I had a feeling Constantine and Flavius were going to go over the battle site with a fine tooth comb. I did not leave any evidence that I could remember. Castile stood and smiled. Rest, Eric. I am sure the company is going to be shocked to see you at breakfast. Once Constantine and Flavius return, we will take the company to the ruins of Kaelora. Shit! Escaped my mouth before I could hold it in. The scholar found enough evidence the dungeon is in the city. Castile arched her eyebrow and smirked. You are remarkably well informed. Yes, there is a dungeon near Kaelora called the Shimmering Labyrinth. Maybe it is even inside the city. Scholar Fabian is still not sure if it is viable. It was still being delved when the city fell some 1,500 years ago, so we assume it is still there. How are we going to deal with the specters? I said, concerned. I had a nightmare about our company being ambushed inside the city, and now it's coming true. Castile smiled tightly, obviously not happy. The Duchess has managed to get 50 runic arrows, 3 runic blades, and a kettle of souls. I thought the Duchess was poor. That sounded like a major investment. While I was pondering this, Castile left the room. Constantine and Flavius left in the middle of the night, saying they couldn't waste time, as there was always a chance someone could loot the site. In the morning, I went to breakfast in the barracks early. Lurkin was preparing the company's breakfast, and I hid in a hallway and waited. A lot of solemn, whispered conversations were happening at the table. When everyone was sitting at the table and eating, including Castile, Adrian, and Delmar, I walked out and sat at the table next to Benito. Can you pass the potatoes? I asked innocently. Sure thing, Eric, Benito said, handing me the potato bowl after taking 2 for himself. Benito kept eating away, but silence slowly spread throughout the dining table as all eyes focused on me. Delmar and Adrian's grins told me they had already been informed of my resurrection. Benito was oblivious as he kept eating until Felix elbowed him. What was that for? Benito whined while rubbing his ribs. Felix said with all seriousness, A dead man is sitting next to you. With all eyes on me, I took a bite of the potato. I can assure you, the rumor of my demise has been greatly exaggerated. Benito fell backward off the bench as realization struck him. Normally, the company would have laughed at Benito's misfortune, but instead silence hung in the room as I enjoyed my potato.